All right. What's up, Luigi?
Yeah, how do you, mate? Do you want to start embarrassing yourself?
I don't think I'm embarrassing myself.
Well, you can prove, so I'm waiting for the proof.
Sure.
I'm
I'll run
I-
it for
I'm
premises.
static right now. I can't wait to become a Christian.
Yeah. Premise one: things in the universe are in motion. Motion meaning change. Premise two: nothing moves itself. Premise three: a chain of movers can't go on infinitely in a per se causal chain. Premise four: there must be a first mover that isn't moved by someone else. The conclusion: the first mover is what we call God.
Okay, so because you can't explain something, then automatically then there's a God.
No. What can we not explain?
Well, you can't explain the causality. You can explain everything you said is crystal clear, but you're unable to give like the reason behind.
What do you mean? I can't give the reason behind.
You can't.
I can justify each position. What do you mean?
Each position, okay, well, so even if you can justify the position, you can't put the author behind the creation of the position. So that doesn't give you a way to prove anything.
Okay, so if I can prove that there's a first cause that's the source of existence itself, that's a conscious being that's fully
No.
actualized, then what is that
Okay,
at that
so,
point?
so since you can prove stuff, can you explain to me the double slit test? I'm very curious about that. And also, explain to me about quantum entanglement as
That
well.
has no relevance to the argument.
It has, of course, it
Okay, what's the
has.
relevance to the argument? Like, how does that attack the argument? Like,
So let me give you the relevance to the argument. Those two things I mentioned, they could potentially mean that we live in a simulation
how did
because the light is behaving in a certain way when it's not being observed and is acting a different way when it's being observed, and then once you entangle two particles, it doesn't matter the distance, they are still connected somehow. So like for example, if you're playing a video game and things are being rendered as you are observing their scene, but as soon as you move on to the next stage or a different room, then it stops being rendered and light acts in that way. So whatever you're saying now might not even be real.
okay. So, firstly,
And I'm
how
not
does
even
this
saying,
like?
look, man, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm not telling you that we live in a simulation. I'm saying I don't know.
Okay,
Maybe we live in a
how
simulation,
does this
maybe we don't.
like debunk the argument I brought? Firstly, like
Mate,
before.
there's nothing to debunk. You
Okay,
need
so
to
if I
prove
make a
that God
deductive
exists.
argument, I
So
made a
who is
deductive
God?
argument.
So who
The
is God?
argument isn't about which God it is, it's just proving God.
Right, but I don't dispute either that God exists. I've got no issues with that. But the God of the Bible, so explain that the God of the Bible, because I can see a cross there. It look like you are into some sort of Christianity or something like that. So just now combine the God of the Bible with the things you said before.
It logically, like the God of the Bible fits this. I don't see what you're really asking.
What about the God? Is it the God of the Bible that has created all the things?
I believe that, but that's not the purpose of the argument. The purpose of the argument is just to prove God.
Yeah, but how do you know it's God? How do you know it's not a civilization, or how do you know it's not like it's it's something else than
Well,
a single
do those have the
Almighty?
necessary attributes to be the first cause? No.
But why do they need to be gods? Like for example, let's think about like on human level, yeah. When we had the British Empire, it was the combined empire that took over the world. There wasn't a god. It was just like the island they got together and was clever enough to conquer a huge chunk of the planet.
Okay.
So why not a different planet, a different civilization, or whatever
Because
else?
they lack
You know.
the attributes necessary for the first cause. Ultimately, they would still, if there was just a bigger civilization, they would still need the first cause, a first cause that created them, unless they have the qualities that are and attributes required by
Yeah.
the first cause, which a
Yeah.
civilization
No.
wouldn't.
Look, I think to be fair, mate, I'm gonna let you go, but I'm just gonna say what I think. I think you probably got high on some trip with acid or smoked some weird stuff, and something perfectly makes sense to you, but it doesn't make sense to anybody else. I can assure you. So, unfortunately, mate, I have to say you are tripping. But good luck trying to prove that to someone else. Yeah, it's
Okay,
okay.
so you didn't have like an addressing to the argument.
Mate, you're talking gibberish. Well,
What
well,
was
I mean,
gibberish? What didn't logically
what
follow?
you're saying is nonsense.
What was
Complete
nonsense?
nonsense.
What was nonsense?
The fact that you're trying to justify God based on you know, whatever you try to entangle with God, it doesn't prove anything, mate. You're just talking shit. Sorry.
You're making claims. What's the justification behind them? You
I
could
don't
say
need
it's
to
gibberish.
justify it. Look,
Okay,
I
I
don't
mean
need
that's all I
to.
needed to hear. If you, I don't need to justify claims, that's all I needed to hear, dude. What's up, Lustral?
What's good, bro?
What you want to talk about?
Just the prompt, like your proof
Mhm.
for God, the argument for motion. Um, so, oh my goodness, hold on.
All good. Yeah. While we wait, Luigi, the second you start talking about how you don't have to justify claims and throwing out, like logic and all that, it's pointless.
Okay, my bad about that.
All good.
Uh, so my thing with the argument for motion is where it ends is like this is what we would call God, right? And to me, I guess I just don't see why that would be God. Like in, I guess in a colloquial sense, how we would refer to God, I just kind of think of him as like a that first cause has a mind or a creator with a mind or whatever fundamental reality. If that thing has a mind, then that's how I would describe it as God. Um,
Yeah, I can justify, for example, why the first cause would need to have a mind and that type of thing, or would
so
need to be
would
conscious.
yeah, I'd like to hear that. So would you just say like the this sort of version of the argument for motion is just a starting place to get there?
Yeah, it's just a starting point, and then if I need to prove that this first cause has to be conscious, etc., I can go about doing that.
All right.
Yeah. So something you wanted me to show that they have to be conscious.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you know what the principle of internal action is?
I know I'm not familiar.
Okay, so the principle of eternal act or action is basically the ability to initiate without being initiated, um, which is something that comes about with conscious beings, right? A non-conscious being would have no awareness, will, or intention, right? Um, so, for example, a rock would be an example of a non-conscious being. It is dependent on other things to like allow it to act or initiate. It can't self-initiate. Um, the reason the first cause would have to have this internal principle of action, i.e., being conscious, would otherwise it would require something outside of itself to initiate it, which then therefore it's not the first cause. It's the thing that initiates this initiates it. That would be the first cause.
Okay. So to like simplify, like it would be like the idea that conscious beings have a will or a nature that can move them from themselves versus like a rock or something that's unconscious is only moved by something else and not of itself?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Um. So what would be the, I guess, like, would that mesh? How would that mesh with like someone like who's a determinist who thinks that we don't have free will? Would they just not hold to that principle? And you would have to get them to hold to that principle, and then uh,
They could
something like
be a
that?
determinist. It wouldn't really matter. It would still, the first cause would still need an internal principle of action.
Okay, because like the way I would just see it and why I asked that is like they would ask like, or I assume they would say something like, "Well, conscious beings are also acted upon in that way. They don't. We don't really have will from ourselves. It's just we're imparted that through like brain chemicals or whatever they want to say, and that's what's pushing us to do the things that we do, rather than us getting our conscious being getting that from itself, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
I mean, I could grant that position. But the first cause would still need to be have an internal principle of action, and i.e., be conscious. Now, they could just say that like conscious beings on Earth or whatever, they're not free will or whatever they want to hold to. But whatever the first cause is, it would have to be have an internal principle of act and be conscious. Otherwise, it would require a cause outside of itself.
And and would you say that this internal principle of act is identical to consciousness? Like, there's no way to have that without consciousness.
Um, I would say I would say it's an ass. Like, I would say so. You would need to have an internal principle of action for consciousness as we know it. Now, obviously, if you're a determinist, um, your understanding of like you would affirm that people that are conscious don't have an internal principle of act. And I mean, honestly, for the sake of the argument, I could just grant that, and then just grant that every humans and stuff aren't conscious, and then the first cause would have to be conscious. It doesn't really matter.
Okay, so you would just say like, even if we don't have that, and that's not something we see in the natural world, this, like, say we all don't have free will, we're all just um partaking in the same motion as like a rock. uh Even with that being the case, whatever the first cause is would have that, and they would, um so at least they would have that, even if in our natural, even if the conscious beings we see around us don't,
Yeah.
basically. Okay, because my idea of the I guess thing from, or the argument for motion, is I always just saw it like you get to that point, and then I just don't see why that internal action can't be just a disposition, or you know something like, the thing I immediately think of is just like a natural law that just acts on the universe of itself, but it doesn't have a mind, it can't make choices, it doesn't have any sense of morality, and it's only a an actor in a specific scenario. So like gravity only acts in terms of gravitation, and let's say like not heat, for example. Like, it's not the first cause of heat. um,
Hmm.
so I would say like I don't see why this internal act can't be something like that, versus why it has to be a, like, a conscious being that's making a choice.
Yeah. I mean, you could also argue, for example, if the first cause would have to is something that eternally exists, and then like it has a temporal effect, or its act of creating a temporal, like the universe, beginning to exist. Um, and you could argue how if the first cause is not conscious, or it would need to be conscious for it to be able to be eternally exist and then have a temporal effect. Um, so it would need to be a conscious agent with intellect and will to be in a state where it eternally exists and then freely choose to create a temporal effect. If it just eternally existed and created a temporal effect and was non-conscious, then um, it would need something outside of itself to initiate.
Okay, so you're saying that in order to create a temporal effect while itself being eternal, it needs some sort of a will.
Yeah.
Uh, okay. Um, so what would be the problem with just like a eternally existing like natural law, like I said?
Yeah. Well, if it
What would be
eternally
the problem with it?
existed and then its act of creating is a temporal effect, like you can't like logically justify how a non-conscious being can just, without any external factor or thing moving it to do this, can just eternally exist and then uh, create like a temporal thing, or just complete within itself. I mean, that just kind of goes against what a non-conscious entity is.
Okay, so like if it eternally existed, it wouldn't one day just like turn on and create something temporal,
Yeah.
like in that
Otherwise,
way.
it would have to have a internal principle of action and a consciousness, a will
I
to be able
guess
to do that.
I just don't know that I'm thinking that it created something. I'm just thinking of that it's uh, moving other things that it's never really created, and that multiple things have different effects on other things. So like gravity, for example, didn't create anything, but it moves things that are already there um, to, I guess, coagulate or in some way, like collapse into a planet or something. I'm not sure if you would call that like creation, but I don't think it's like creation like in the same way God would create uh, something temporally, like how He created the Earth or something like that, ex nihilo. Um, I just view it all as like uh, moving things that are already there, I guess.
Mm. So things already existed, and then the first cause like made used that and made that in the universe.
Yeah, like I don't think um like these this universe was created by this first cause, and that gets kind of into what I said earlier. Like I don't see, and maybe this is a different like topic. I don't want to like derail, but like why there can it be multiple first causes of different phenomena, I guess you could call it, uh, to create like the setup of events that we see around us.
Okay. I mean, honestly, I like you could affirm or hold that position. It wouldn't really affect the argument in any way.
Yeah, I don't think it would affect, especially the argument you gave.
Hmm.
Um, it's just, but I don't. I think it affects the argument of getting to a conscious one. Is what I mean. It would still have that internal like act that you were talking about, but I don't think that's identical to like a conscious will in a sense. But if you did see it as similar, then you would just call whatever like I'm describing as God, and it would um, it'd still technically be God under that definition. But to me, it's just not like the same God as like a or sort of theistic God in the way that we think of him. Um,
I mean, it would still have to be conscious in this scenario because it still has to have the ability to initiate without being initiated. Even if we were to say like it just used like pre-existing matter or whatever, it created off that. I mean, that's fine, but it would still need to be a conscious first cause.
okay, it would
Yeah,
still
because if
it
you're
would still need
affirming that like it's this matter is eternally there, and then this first cause is also eternally there, and then it decided to create the universe. At some point, it would require a will in order to do that, or an external cause outside of itself to spark that if it was non-conscious.
Well, I don't think it created the universe. I just think that it's responsible for the motion in the universe, right? So it's not a sort of creator in that sense, but it's the fundamental thing that moves is causing all the motion in the universe. So the things we see as far as cause and effect in the universe go, it's like when something falls down that's caused by gravity or whatever, and that is essentially what I'm describing as the first cause, not like the creation of the universe as far as like a Big Bang or however we want to say that occurred. So in this viewpoint, it would be acting eternally, and that act would change along like I guess you could say like trackable routes, because it's not it's not making choices. It's just, matter in motion type of activity that is causing these routes to occur. I'll let Even in if he wants to get in. Because, yeah, I'm kind of thinking out loud here. But I do appreciate the conversation, man.
Yeah, of course. Appreciate you coming up.
Yeah.
Oh. Multiple first causes like the Trinity, perhaps? Maybe. What's up, Even?
Yeah, so the argument, I already sent you the formal regimentation of the argument, and I also have the link of the proof of the program that proves that it's valid, and the argument is deductively valid. So now you can concede now that you're completely wrong.
Where'd you send it to me?
Yeah, I sent it in your private messages that you conveniently ignored.
How do I check my private messages? Hold up. Do y'all know how to check private messages?
I can even send you the link to. I could even send you the.
Yeah. Hold up. Yeah, how do I check my private messages?
This is the link.
Hold up. Let me type in your name.
Click on your profile and click mess. Oh my god, just.
Even underscore. I'll go to our DMs.
Okay, look. Just look at the. Did you see the link I just posted in the chat?
Links don't pop up in chat. Like it only pops up.
Yeah, but you can copy and paste
okay,
it, right?
I found it.
Yeah, so that's the form of the argument, and I already gave you the glossary. So P, X, Y just means X has the potential to be Y. Okay. A of X just means X is actual. Okay. Right. And this is just the regimentation of the argument I gave. The reason why it doesn't have three premises is because in the argument I gave, remember the third premise was just a law of logic, it's just a law of identity. So that's not going to do anything to the argument. So there's no need to have it there. And you can check it. I just posted the proof checker in the chat, and you can see that it's valid. So now you can just concede, as you said you would, because you accepted all the premises and you denied the conclusion, but the argument is valid.
All right, so X is actually if and only if there exists some Y such that X has a potential to be Y and X does not equal Y. Therefore nothing.
No, and X is equal to Y.
Well, you put X isn't equal. You put the.
Remember, premise one is your premise one.
Yeah, in your thing,
no.
You put
It's
the
just
equal sign with the slash.
No, what do you?
Which means doesn't equal. Did you mean equal?
Where are you? What are you looking at?
The what you sent me in DMs.
What?
Oh, okay. Wait, I see it. Sorry, I misread it.
Bruh. Look, one is just look. It's just your definition of actual. So for all x, x is actual if and only if there is a y such that x has the potential to be y, and x is y. In other words, x is something that it has the potential to be. Okay. And then the second one is just nothing. Nothing has. There isn't an x such that x has the potential to be itself, as you agreed with, and that's just going to entail that nothing is actual, right? And you've agreed with all the premises already, so there's no need to question whether you accept the premises. You've already accepted them, and then you said the argument didn't follow.
Yeah,
But
so-
clearly, as you can see, it does follow.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. So if you're saying x is actual if and only if x has the potential to be itself, and nothing has the potential to be itself.
No, that's not what I said. No. You're no. This is I've already given you the full glossary. You can't even do this dishonest stuff anymore. Listen, it just says, look, hold on. It says, let me just go okay, there we go. It says, for all x, x is actual if and only if there is a y, such that x has the potential to be y, and x is y, right? Which is what you said. That was just your definition of actual. You said, I define actual as something something is actual. To say something is actual is to say that it is something that has the potential to be. Right? That's just like perfect capturing of your definition.
Something
And
is
now the
already
next
that
one.
in your state.
And now the next one you said, all right, next one is there doesn't exist an x such that x has the potential to be. There is no x such that x has the potential to be itself, which is just the second one, right? And those two entail irrefutably, as I've shown, that nothing is actual. So you've agreed with the premises, and I've proven that the argument is valid. So now you must accept the conclusion or just concede.
No, because you're misusing the word how actual is meant. Something that is
No,
actual
wait.
is already fully itself in that respect.
You-
It
okay,
does not
do you-
need
okay,
the
hold
potential to
on.
be itself because it already is.
Host, you've agreed with the premises. You've agreed with the premises early. Remember, we've already established all of this. There's no need to run away. We've agreed with the premises, and then you were saying the conclusion doesn't follow. And then I said, okay, I will take my time and write it out, the formalization. And then when I was writing it out, you ended your live very conveniently. You conveniently ended your live when I was writing it out. And now I have written it out, okay? And I've shown you that it's valid, and you've already agreed with the premises.
Here,
Are you saying that you no longer agree with the premises?
I always agreed with the premises. I said the conclusion didn't logically follow.
Okay,
YouTube
well,
stream, but
yeah.
that's
So
what I have.
yeah. Well, I've just shown you that the conclusion follows.
No, because
I
it doesn't at
no.
all. You're
Okay, well, hold on.
misusing the
Are
term.
you saying that the
So
program is wrong, or I don't understand?
I'm saying that you're within your syllogism, it's
Yeah.
misusing what actuality means. Actuality is
Oh,
something that is actual is already fully itself. It does not
there any
need the
one of the
potential to
premises
be
in my
itself because
syllogism?
it
Wait,
already is. If you're
is there?
arguing,
Wait, hold on, host. Do you disagree with any of the premises in my syllogism, or do you agree with them all?
uh, X is actual if and only if there exists some. Yeah, I would agree with the premises. I don't
Okay,
agree
you
with the
agree. Okay,
conclusion.
you agree with the premises. Now the argument. Now,
I
okay,
don't think
you
the
agree with the premises.
I don't think the
You agree with the.
conclusion logically follows.
Okay, hold on. Okay. Do you agree with the premises? Is the argument valid?
Also, I would say I
Is
disagree with the
ho-
last
is
premise.
the argument? No.
I also
Is
disagree
the
with the last premise. If something's
wait,
already itself,
wait,
I would
wait,
just,
wait, you- wait,
or
you-
actually no, I
wait,
agree.
wait a
Yeah,
second. Are
nothing
you
has
saying?
the potential to
Wait,
be itself. Yeah.
wait. Are you saying? So you're saying you disagree with one of the premises?
No, I disagree with the conclusion. I don't think it logically
No,
follows.
no. Okay, I'm not
Premises
asking you.
follow.
I'm not. Okay, notice how my question wasn't.
I
if you
agree with
disagree
your
with the
premises.
conclusion.
I disagree with
Notice
your
how that
conclusion.
was
Your
not
conclusion
the
doesn't
question.
logically follow.
Okay, so do you agree with the premises?
I agree with the premises. Your conclusion does not
Okay.
logically follow.
Okay, you agree with the premises. Okay. Now, do you agree that if the premises are true and the argument is valid, that the conclusion is true?
If the premises are true and the argument is valid and logically follows, then it's true.
Okay,
Yes,
so
but
now,
it doesn't logically follow.
so here's the proof that it's valid. You've agreed with the premises. Let me just show you the proof that it's valid. Let me just copy this link. And if you look into chat, you just copy and paste this text and put it into your whatever web browser you're in. So I just sent you
Links don't pop up on TikTok chat.
Yeah, but can you not copy the text?
It doesn't show up. It only shows up for you.
Oh god.
Just
Okay,
send it in
let me
DMs.
because when I was
Just for YouTube stream, see, there's no link. It didn't show up. Okay, I see it now.
okay, so are you looking at the proof checker right now?
Yeah, dude.
Okay, do you see how it says entails, right? And it shows you like a tree at the bottom. You see how it says that? You see how it says it shows the premises and it says the premises and then it says entails and then it says the conclusion. You see how it says that, right? On the top? Yeah, that means it's valid. So will you acknowledge that it's valid now?
No, not because you wrote letters on tree proof generator and it said that it logically follows without just the letters, not has the word define, etc.
But I gave you a glossary. Hold on, wait.
Did you give the system glossary? Does it know what these are representing?
No. You're confused. Listen. So in your DMs, if you look above the message I just sent,
I got the glossary. The proof text.
I didn't just post the. Okay. If you got the glossary, that's fine. The proof checker doesn't fucking need the glossary. It just needs the symbols.
Yes, but it doesn't know what the symbols represent. Something it
doesn't matter.
Yes, it does. So you could have words that are defined as absolute bogus and that doesn't make sense. But the letters, when you write it out, make a valid form.
It's the logical form. It's the logical. So look, what I gave is valid in virtue of the form. It's in virtue of the logical form. The content doesn't matter.
Okay, so what doesn't make sense is in your thing it says X is actual and X has the potential to be X.
It says there does not exist. Well, sorry, the glossary. Yeah, so
yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I'll explain that. So that's just telling you so when you say A of X, that's to give you like an English translation of what that means. So if I say A of X, that just means X is actual. And if I say PXY,
yes,
that just means X has the potential to be Y. Right? So it's just explain. So that's the glossary. The glossary just tells you what those terms mean. Okay?
In your proof that you sent to like the website or whatever, you're saying X is actual and then X has the potential to be X.
No. That's the glossary. That just tells you how we're interpreting those symbols, okay? And then what I sent
in your proof, dude. It's in the tree proof generator, the website you sent me, it's in the website.
No, that's not in the website. Are you confused? Just look at what I put. Let's look at what's in the bar at the top. It's just like the formulas that are used in the inference.
X is actual if and only if X has the potential to be itself.
Okay. Yeah.
That's
So you
not
agree with the
means. I disagree.
But you've agreed. No, hold on. You said you agree with both premises. Like, do we disagree?
I disagree with that. That's not what actual means. As I said before, I told you then, and I'm telling you again, you're using actual and potential wrong, and it doesn't make sense. You're saying X is actual if and only if X has the potential to be itself. You're not understanding what actual means in metaphysics, dude.
Are you saying that you disagree with one of the premises?
Yes, you're misusing the
Okay,
words.
okay, well, that's a contradiction. It is both. It both is the case, and it's not the case that you disagree with the premises. Earlier, you said you agree with both premises.
You
That's
do
also
know
what
what
you
the
said.
law of non-contradiction is, right?
That's
It's when a
also what you
preposition is
said.
both true and false at the same time and same
That's
respect.
also
Those are
what you
different
said.
times. Like,
That's
can you
also
use your
what you.
brain here, dude?
That's also
You
what
are
you also
implying
said.
that X is
Hold
both
on,
not
hold on.
X and X. That's
Okay.
simultaneously violating the
Yeah.
law of
So
non-contradiction in
yeah.
your
So so
premises.
okay. Yeah. So you contradicted yourself. You said
No,
earlier you said you agreed with
this is
both
such a waste
premises,
of
and
time, bro. Let me show show the YouTube stream what he just sent me. Oh, I need to take a screenshot of it. All right, let me show y'all what this guy just sent me. Here. You guys disagree with the background? Have any questions? Request up as guest. Let me just show y'all what he just sent me. Okay, look at this. Sorry, Alexander, just 1 second. This is what he's saying here. Right here, he's saying that X is actual if and only if X has the potential to be itself, which misunderstands what it means to be actual. If you have let's say at a previous time, for example, I 10 years ago, I then had the potential to be myself now, right? And now I'm myself right now. That's actualized. I no longer have the potential because to be actualized means you've reached that potential. It undermines completely what it means to have potential and what it means to be actual. What's up, Alexander?
Hey man, yeah, I mean, what was the dude doing? What are you talking about?
It's I have showed it on the YouTube stream. He came on earlier and then he said he'd write a syllogism, and then he came back now with the syllogism, and it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I don't even know what that is, dude.
Yeah. Anyways, what you want to talk about, brother?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think that there isn't enough data to say that there definitively is no God, so I think that the correct answer is agnosticism, because we don't know that there is one either, so there's kind of evidence for both. So
I disagree. I think we can prove God deductively and logically.
yeah, I mean, I think that there is a God, so I do agree with you, but I just am not entirely sure of it. Because you can have science does get, pretty close to doing it. So it's like, yeah, you know what, there certainly could be, but even still, then it's, well, there also is the case for that. So so it's like could also not be. So
I I would disagree. I think we can prove God right now through deductive argumentation, through like metaphysics and purely logic. So it's not like a thing of like we don't know, or it's something we can't prove. And Hegel, I already said which premise I disagree with.
yeah, I mean, I lean towards your point on it. I do think that there's a lot of evidence going for it. There's just so much complexity and data, and stuff like that. So yeah, I do. There's a lot of mysteries still in science. And like even if you do say, well, there is a small chance that the universe can occur on its own, then it's still going to be a small chance, unless we have something a totally a paradigm shift in science, then yeah, I do agree with you.
All right. Well, appreciate it, brother. Thank you for coming up.
All right, man. Have a good one.
You too. All right. Hold up. Shake. Hold up. Jesus said he's not lying. Jesus says host is a bot. You have to agree with Jesus. That's logically sound argumentation. What's up, Alt?
Yeah, before talk about the background, like why did you run from even?
I didn't.
I mean, you obviously did.
Okay. What did I run from him on?
On what premises you disagreed with and dropped them?
I disagreed with.
And you also
premise one.
said that. Do you recall what premise 1 was?
Yes, I can pull it back up.
So you don't recall.
Yeah, premise 1 is
You just said you
for all
recalled and you're
x,
going to pull it back
x is
up.
actually it.
That's a contradiction.
You asked me, can I recall what premise 1 is? I'm recalling it right now.
And then you said, let me pull it back up.
Yeah, I can. Why can't
If
I
you
do
could
that?
recollect it, you wouldn't. That doesn't mean you recollect it.
Do you have like an actual argument or you want to bring up or?
Yeah, so, hold on. I'm saying before that, we could talk about you running from even. So you said you disagreed with the first premise, which was what?
For all x, x is actual if and only if there exists y such that x has a potential to be y. Or, in simpler terms, x is actually if and only if x has the potential to be itself.
I'm not sure that was right. It seemed like most of the time you were mischaracterizing him. But what there do you disagree with?
It misunderstands what it means to be actual and what it means to be potential.
Yeah, what that premise is saying is that to be actual is to be realized potential, right? It's to be realized potential.
No.
So I don't know what there's
It's
wrong.
saying x is actual if and only if x has the potential to be itself. He's arguing that even though it's itself, if it still doesn't have potential to be itself despite it being actual, then it's not actual.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's right. But
Yeah,
in any case, you shouldn't have
exactly.
ran from him. You should have.
I did.
No, I'm
didn't
saying
run
you're
from
not
him, yeah.
right. I'm saying.
Okay.
Dropping him was.
That's
is
what
most
his
definitely
argument
running
was.
from him.
That's what it was originally before he put out.
Then why would you drop him if you're not running? I don't get it.
Because it's going nowhere. He doesn't have an argument.
What?
I got you, Davey. I'll be nice. Man.
He doesn't have an argument? That's funny. Like, that
His
wasn't an
argument
argument?
Just misunderstands the terms.
You were trying to walk you through it, and then you dropped him, right? You're
He
obviously
walked me
running, but-
through it. It
Yeah,
made
we
no
can-
sense, and then he
and
just
then-
started ad homing. So I
Yeah,
docked him.
so he wasn't ad homing. Apparently, you don't know what an ad hom is, but what
Was
you
he
said
addressing what I
it
said,
was
or
going.
was he
You said it was
attacking
going
me?
in.
Was he addressing what I said, or was he attacking?
He was addressing what was
Okay,
being
so he
said.
was attacking.
He was
me,
trying to
right?
explain to you. He was explaining to you the argument.
Mm-hmm.
He most definitely was.
Okay. So, did you have an argument or anything you wanted to make?
Yeah, I'm interested. You say atheism is false. Like, do you happen to have an argument, or?
Mm-hmm. I can run you through the premises. Premise 1, things
Yeah,
in
sure.
the universe are in motion, motion meaning change. Premise 2, nothing moves itself. Premise 3, a chain of movers can't go on infinitely in a per se causal chain. Premise 4, there must be a first mover that isn't moved by someone else. The conclusion, the first mover is what we call God. The first
I mean,
God.
the argument's already. Yeah, that are. I mean, are you? Okay? Let's just. Do you know what formal validity is? You know that argument's invalid, right?
What's the invalid part of the argument?
What's the invalid part?
Yeah, you're
That's
saying
such
my
a
argument's
strange
invalid. What's
question.
invalid about it? Where is it invalid?
Where the form, the
Yeah,
only
what's
the
in-
only
how's
spot
it
it could be
invalid?
logically invalid. The form of the argument.
Yeah, what about it is? What about the
Okay,
form?
so I guess. So yeah, if you don't understand what logical validity is, maybe you should just say that instead of asking what about it's invalid. Do you know
you're
what
saying
validity
you're
is in
saying
logic?
the form is invalid. What about the form is invalid?
Yeah, in logic, the only thing that could be invalid is form, or at least that's the only relevant sense of validity when talking about a deductive inference. Do you know what validity is?
Yes,
I
I
can
know what
explain it to you
logical
if not.
validity is, dude.
So how you confused what it means to say the form's invalid? I
You
don't.
said the form's invalid.
What?
I'm
Okay.
asking
What do
you
you?
what
What do you?
about the
What is
form?
your understanding of
The
validity? Just so we're clear.
logical validity is when it's impossible for all the premises to be true and the conclusion to be false.
Okay. So do you understand how that argument's invalid then?
No, that's why I'm asking you.
Okay. So have you happened to write it down?
I have the premises written down.
Okay. So are you able to like regiment them into symbols?
Off the top of my head, probably not.
That doesn't. It's not that hard. It's like the argument in natural language is obviously invalid. So if you want, I would just write it out for you, since for some reason that's hard for you. I could just show you how the argument's invalid. No problem.
Sure.
All right. So let's write out the premises. P1.
Things in the universe are in motion.
Okay, and P2.
Nothing moves itself.
P3.
A chain of movers can't go on infinitely in a per se causal chain.
And then it was the conclusion.
No, then it's premise 4. There must be a first mover that isn't moved by someone else. Here we go, which is like some nonsense.
Okay, now conclusion.
The first mover is what we call God.
And let's just cut the bullshit. You don't understand how this is invalid?
What? How is it invalid?
No. I'm just saying cut the
I've been
bullshit.
asking.
Do you not
Obviously,
see how
don't
it's invalid?
understand. If I keep asking you how it's invalid, obviously I don't understand.
So we can do this two ways. We could go more rigorously, and if you want, I can regiment these into first order notation, or for the sake of simplicity, we can do just propositional logic notation. It's up to you which one we want to do. They're both invalid in both ways. So fucking obviously invalid. Like a kindergartner who knew like rudimentary logic would like just instantly call out this as invalid. But which do you want to do? Just prop logic, or we can take some more time and do first order?
Let's do prop logic.
Okay, so then this is so easy. I mean, each premise is like its own symbol. So obviously the argument's invalid. Here, let's just do this. Premise 1 is A. P2 is B. Premise 3 is C. Premise 4 is D. And then conclusion is E. Yeah, it's invalid.
What?
I mean, there's no logical connectives. Yeah, I mean, if the argument had something, surely you know what like inference rules are, right? Like an archetypical example or a paradigmatic example of a valid argument would be if A, then B, right? That's like a first premise. Second premise is A, conclusion B, right? But this argument follows the structure of premise 1A, premise 2B, premise 3C, premise 4D, conclusion E. Do I need to like?
So
do we not see how that's invalid?
Propositional knowledge part of?
Propositional logic?
Propositional knowledge.
I'm talking about prop logic.
Okay, I thought you said propositional knowledge. Yeah, so
you're not tracking. Okay, so now I spelled it out literally ABCs, right? Literally the premises are A, B, C, D, E. So it's literally in ABCs. Do we now see how the argument's invalid? I mean, this is like laughably obviously invalid. To say that you know logic and you can't like at face value call out what an argument is valid or not, even in just natural language is kind of pathetic. But now that it's A, B, C, D, conclusion E, we should know it's invalid, correct?
No, I don't.
Okay,
How is
you
this
still
invalid,
don't know
dude?
how it's invalid. Yeah, so I can accept A, B, C, D, and I can deny E. Boom. Simple as that.
Okay, so if you. Okay, so how can you accept. So if you're accepting the premises and then denying the conclusion, you're accepting that nothing changes itself, things are moving, there can't be an infinite amount of movers, and there must be a first mover that isn't moved by something else, but then you're denying the
Yeah, and
conclusion
then
that there's a first mover.
no, the conclusion is
you're
the first mover is God.
okay, so is there a first mover?
I can accept all the premises and deny the first mover is God.
It's what we call God. Is there a first mover?
No. God is
Okay,
supposed to be an
so
agent.
there's not a first mover, but you're denying,
That's
and
not what I said.
you're saying there's
You're
not
not
a
listening.
first mover, but you are
Nope, not what
accepting
I'm
the
saying.
premise
I'm
4 that
saying
says
the
there
literal
must be a
opposite of
first
that.
mover that isn't moved by
You're not
someone.
listening at all. You're not listening at
Okay.
all. Turn on the listening ears. I'm accepting all the premises and denying the conclusion that being the first mover is God. So I'm accepting the premises and denying God is the first mover.
So there is a first mover.
Comprende? Yes,
Okay.
that's what it would mean to accept the premises.
Okay, so then I prove that there's a first mover. That's the purpose of the argument.
Okay, but do you see how that doesn't lead to God?
I just said it's what we call God. Now I would
The
go
argument's
into
not valid.
how is the
No,
argument not
because
valid?
is God an agent under? Wait, well, because
if you
I've already explained how it's not
can
valid.
you accept all the
But look,
premises and then deny that there's a
is
first
God
mover?
is no, but I can deny the first mover is God.
Okay, so if the conclusion is the first mover is what I call God or what we call God, then it's
You're saying more
logically
than that.
valid.
You're not just labeling the first mover God.
That's
There's
what
more
the
to it than
conclusion
that. No,
says.
it's not.
The
That's
first mover is
not.
what we call
Wait,
God.
wait.
I'm just labeling the
Let's not
first.
be an eon. Let's not be an eon. You're not merely labeling the first mover God. By God, you take God to be the first mover, who's also an agent,
Okay.
amongst other things.
So
correct?
is that what the premises and
Can you
conclusions
answer
say,
the
or
question?
is that what you're saying?
Wait, answer the question.
That's not what the
Answer
argument
the
says,
question.
is it?
Answer the
Okay.
question.
So you're not even
Are
listening.
you gonna
Following
dodge?
the argument. You're just
That's not an answer
you're
either.
making up words.
Now
You're
you're
adding
just
words to
scurrying
the
away.
argument.
You're running in a corner like a frightened rat.
You're adding words. The conclusion is the first mover is what we call God, and then you're telling me that the conclusion is me calling the first mover, saying that the first mover is God actually, and not what we call God, and that this is an agent and all this other stuff. That's not what the argument says. If you want to just add words to the argument, then you can make it logically invalid. No one's running from you, dude. You're just being intellectually dishonest. If anyone disagrees with the background or has any questions, request that. I'm not. By the way, wait, where's it? I can add the words what we call God. I call the first mover God. It's not a problem. Are you going to stop adding words to the argument? Why'd I stop running tags? Argument for motion's better.
Yeah, I never added words, right? You're just being dishonest, unironically. What I asked you, I did not introduce words into the argument. I asked you if by God do you mean an agent? That's all I asked, and you ran from the question. You claimed I added words. All I did was an inquisition to clarify what's meant by God, because if by God you don't mean an agent, then I remain an atheist because I deny an agent created the universe. If you're just saying there's a first thing, right, a thing in causal reality, the first mover per se, then yeah. Well, obviously I don't actually accept this argument. For the sake of argument, I can accept it, and that doesn't move me to God because you're equivocating on what's meant by God. You're a Christian, or I presume given the cross, so I would think you take it that God is an agent, right? He has a will, he has knowledge, he's loving, right? He has psychological states. You take that to be constitutive of the meaning of God. We both know that. Don't act dishonest. So by God, you do mean an agent. Now, if that's true, by God you mean an agent, then you're not labeling first mover God. It's not just nominal. You're adding in things. You're adding the first mover is an agent. That's something that's added in. And that's something I can deny while retaining accepting the rest of the premises. Do you understand that?
Okay, so it's not what the argument is saying. You're just assuming
I'm
that I mean
I'm asking
agent?
you, I'm not assuming
Okay.
anything. What is the assumption I'm making?
By the way, he wasn't asking a question.
Hello, what's the assumption?
You originally assumed that I was talking about an agent. Now you want to, if you
No,
want
I
to ask
asked you the
now, then
question
you
if
can
what
ask. Sure.
Wait, what's the okay, let's just get this. What are the reasons to think I made that assumption?
Because it's on the live that can be rewatched.
Yeah, what did I say that
you
makes it
you
such
didn't
that I'm
ask me.
assuming that?
You addressed that I meant agent and then all this other stuff.
No, I
Yeah.
said I asked whether you mean an agent. Yes. And then I ended up after you kicked me running like a little bitch, I came back up and I explained to you how I'm making a very clear inference that you believe that God is an agent, right? That was an inference, not a presupposition, right? I made an inference from your theology to God being an agent, and if that's true, the word God captures agency, then it's not true that God is merely a first mover. And from that licenses me to accept the premises and deny the conclusion. Unless you're just equivocating on God, then that has no force against an atheist, because I can accept that there's this trivial sense of God, accepting the premises, and deny that there's an agent creating the universe. Okay, so let's just get clear. You're not arguing for an agent creating the universe. I'm presuming you also have no argument for that. You can correct me if that's wrong.
No,
But yeah,
I
I
have an
can walk
argument for
away.
that.
I can walk away from here. Yeah, okay, great. You have no argument that God exists in the relevant sense.
I said I have
and
an
let's just
argument for it.
Oh, you do? Okay. And let's just be clear. I
We didn't
just
put on our
before we
listening
move to
ears?
that argument. Yeah, before
I had to hit
No,
him
no,
with
you were
that.
over talking me, by the way, so it was hard to hear you. But before we get to that, do you mean an agent by God or no? I just want a yes or no.
No, I just called it God.
Okay, by
So
God
we
you
call
don't
it God.
mean an agent.
In this argumentation now.
Okay, so you equivocate on God.
No.
You use God in equivocal senses. What you're saying in the sense of the argument, you use
this
it not to
argument,
mean
I'm
an
using
agent.
I'm not using God as an
Okay,
agent.
so you are. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. So then why did you just deny that you equivocate on God? Okay, so by God you use. There's multiple senses of the word God.
Yeah, it can be used in different
Oh,
ways.
I was asking. Yeah, I was just asking for the argument that a mind created the universe.
But you never asked for that.
That's what I meant by God. But you equivocated by God.
So when you ask me what I meant by God, you actually meant to ask, do I have an argument?
I'm sure you're aware.
I'm
sure you're aware
God as
that
an
atheists
agent?
do accept there's a first mover, right? I'm sure you're aware atheists do accept. At least some are proponents of the view that there's a first mover. You are aware of that, right?
I'm aware that some do.
Okay, so when you give the argument there's a first mover, you're aware that what the atheist is denying is God, and God does not capture a first mover. So you're using a sense of the word that doesn't capture. It's just idiosyncratic, right?
Do you want
Okay,
the
but
argument?
Imagine I asked you for the argument that there's a mountain next to my house, and you're well aware that everyone means something specific by mountain, right? The folk notion of a mountain. And instead you offer an argument that there's a pond next to my house. And I'm like, no, I asked for a mountain. And then you tell me, no, by mountain, I mean a pond. And then I ask you, are you aware that no one means this? By mountain, they don't mean a pond. And you say yes. Do you not see that as like dishonest in any way?
Did you ask me for an?
Can you answer that question?
Sure. Do you want the
Sure,
argument
you
for
take that
God
to
as
be
an agent?
dishonest. Okay. Well, you're
Okay.
conceding now that you're being dishonest. Now, yeah, let's get the argument that a God exists, the relevant sense of God that you believe in. You don't believe in something that's not an agent.
Yeah. Premise 1, things in the universe are in motion. Premise 2, whatever is in motion is moved by another. Premise 3, a per se causal chain of movers
Is this the
can't
same
progress
argument?
infinitely. No. Then premise 4, anything that causes motion without being moved must act by nature or by will, not by being moved or changed. Premise 5, a purely actual being, meaning no potentiality, cannot act by necessity of nature unless its nature includes intellect and will. Premise
You
6,
said a what? What's P5?
a purely actual being, meaning no potentiality, cannot act by necessity of nature unless its nature includes intellect and will. Premise 6,
Cannot act by necessity?
yeah.
Okay, so to repeat, P5 is a purely actual being cannot act by necessity?
Cannot act by necessity of nature unless its nature includes intellect and will.
Okay.
And premise 6, therefore the unmoved mover must act by intellect and will, i.e. as a conscious agent. I put that as conclusion
Okay.
too, my bad. Or you could put that as conclusion too.
So that's just the conclusion. Okay. Now that we have, I mean, the argument's probably, I mean, yeah, this argument's probably still invalid in first order logic, but let's suppose it were valid.
I mean, if you think
Yeah, I
it's
mean,
invalid, like you can go about showing how it is.
yeah, I mean, you could do that yourself, right? You acted like you're familiar with logic. I mean, if you want to know whether your own argument that you're offering people in defense of theism is valid, and you are familiar of basic tenets of logic, then maybe you can just take 5 minutes or less and just regiment this symbolically, and you can see whether it's valid or not. In fact, that's not even my burden dialectically. Right? If I call into question its validity, it's your task to show me the argument that you're producing is rendered valid. Right. But in any case, I don't want to quibble on that. This argument's likely not valid in first order logic. I would even bet money on it. But we don't even need to talk about that in the moment, because what's more interesting is this very disgusting metaphysic that is used in the argument. I'm assuming you're scholastic or something.
No, not Thomistic. We're Orthodox. We don't get too far into that.
Oh, that's weird. You're Orthodox and you're using Aristotelian metaphysics. In any case, yeah, so this notion of movers, you take it that change is the actualization of potentia, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so what's the argument potential states exist?
Well, if potency or potential means something has a capacity to become, like, are you asking for like a formalized argument?
If you're familiar with your own metaphysics, you know that potentia, realism about potentia, which is an entailment of Aristotelian metaphysics, commits you to ontological pluralism, which is the view that actual and potential states are two different modes of existing. So potential states are not fictions, they're actually ways you exist. Now, I'm unconvinced that things exist in a potential way. I'm asking for you to render that argument. I mean, literally, no one in modern contemporary philosophy uses this metaphysic to account for change. It's like metaphysically inflative, and most actually see as gibberish. Accounts of potentia are very weak. I'm not convinced this is an intelligible concept. At best, it's unintelligible. At being more charitable, it's just something we shouldn't hold to. But yeah, I'm just interested if you have that argument that potential states are real.
Okay. Yeah, I have one.
Great.
I guess I'll run you through the premises of that.
Okay.
Premise 1, change exists. Premise 2, change is the actualization of something that was not yet. could be.
Oh my god, this is a question-begging argument. I've heard this a million times. Sorry, go ahead. What's P2 again?
Change is the actualization of something that was not yet but could be.
Okay, so it's the actualization of potentia.
Premise 3, let me know when you're ready.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing can go from non-being to being except through potentiality. Premise 4, that capacity, i.e. potentiality, must therefore have some kind of being. It is not nothing, nor is it yet actual. And in the conclusion, therefore, potentiality is a real mode of existence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the one is that this argument is question begging if you just look at P2. I mean, if you look at P1 and 2, the argument's just obviously question begging. Because it says change exists and change is the actualization of potential. So it's just saying potential states are real. They exist. Do we understand how that's question begging?
I wouldn't say it's question begging.
I'm sure you wouldn't say that, given you're a
I
proponent of the
would say
view.
it's change. For example, P1 is just an empirical observation.
No, it's in it. So what are you talking about? You can't observe potential states. But look,
P1 is
the
change
point is that the
exists,
argument.
dude.
I'm saying, okay, I'm trying to explain to you how the argument's question making. You're obviously not getting it. So I understand your skull's a little thick. So look, I'm saying that P2 is stating that change is the actualization of potentia, right? So when you say change exists, you're saying that potentia exists in P2.
Yeah, changes the actualization of potential.
Yeah, because it's potential states undergoing actuality, or potential states being realized, right? Which is just to say that potential states exist and change exists, which is when an existing potential state is realized. So that's just saying that potential states exist.
And
That's question begging.
well, P2
The argument's question
is
begging.
I have P2 framed as a definition from
Why would you put a okay, yeah, first you shouldn't. I don't know why in the world you would ever put a definition.
It's an explanatory hypothesis based on the account for what we see in P1.
Yeah, so that doesn't do anything to kind of respond to my objection that the argument's question begging.
Yeah, it would be question begging if I said like potentiality exists because change is the actualization of potentiality. If I
That is what
without
the
me
argument's
giving
saying.
an independent justification for it.
That literally is what the argument's saying.
How so?
I've already explained it 3 times. To say that change is actualized potential is just to say that potential states are realized. When you say change exists, that means potential states exist and they're realized.
So I said change is the actualization of something that was not yet but could be. I'm explaining what change is. After I use change in premise 1 saying change exists.
Oh, but could
How
be
is
is
that
just
question begging?
wait. But then now you're gonna get into some challenges wording it that way, because now it just seems like you're saying something.
That's what
modal.
it was worded originally.
For what, P2?
Yes.
Okay, so let's get this second one apparently. So P2, apparently the P2 you said was what?
Change is the actualization of something that was not yet but could be.
That could be, but is not.
That was not yet but could be.
But is not. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so this argument. Yeah, so first we're going to need to know what it means when you say could. Is that talking about logical possibility?
Mm-hmm.
Wait, you're biting the bullet?
It
You're
has
using modal
the
language?
potential to be.
No.
That's what change
Wait.
is defined as.
Wait. But now you're going back to the, oh my God, you're not understanding. The could language, unless you just mean potential state, that's question begging. And then you said from the beginning you didn't use that, but now you used modal language, which that's not going to,
could be refers
that's
to potential.
that's going to do you harm in the that's going to do you harm in the argument. So by could, you're saying you mean logical possibility.
It's potential.
Then that's still question begging.
How?
I already explained. To say change exists is just to say that potential states are realized. And to say that exists is to say that potential states exist and that some potential states are realized, which is just saying potential states exist.
Okay, so premise 1's also question begging because I'm saying change exists.
Mm-hmm. I understand that's your account of change in P2. What I want is the argument there are potential states, so then change can capture that concept in a meaningful way. All you did was question beg.
If I was trying, if I define, so if for premise 2, if I am saying in simplicity, change is just the reduction of potency to act, right? And I said that without justification, and I was to prove that potentiality exists, then I mean that would be circular. I guess it would be. I could see how that would be question begging or circular argumentation, but I'm not doing that.
You are, because you're saying potential states exist and get realized, and then your conclusion is that potential states exist. I don't already accept
No, if it
potential
was just
states
those
exist.
two, if it was those two premises and then conclusion,
By change exists, you don't mean potential states exist and are realized?
I just define change. Change exists. Yes, I would
Just
agree.
just answer that yes or no.
But then I justified. I provided two other premises.
Just
Nothing
answer.
can go from
Yeah.
non-being to being except through potentiality.
Yeah, just answer yes or no. Is P1 saying that potential states
This
exist
is
and are realized?
going nowhere, bro. Let's just bring up mob. What up, mob?
Well, my bad. I didn't.
No, you're all good.
It's not. What was? Can you give the argument that you were giving the last guy?
Yeah. For potentiality being a real mode of existence, or like the actual argument for God.
Like the argument.
Which one?
The change change is a real feature or whatever. I forget it.
Change exists. Change is the actualization of something that was not yet but could be. Nothing can go from non-being to being except through potentiality. That capacity must therefore have some kind of being. It is not nothing, nor is it yet actual. Therefore, potentiality is a real mode of existence. That argument.
Oh, is that the one you gave him?
There were multiple. I don't know which one you're referring to.
Oh, I don't know either. I joined later. But that change is the actualization of the potential. That's your definition, right?
Yeah.
Okay. What about
Move from state
like
of potential to actual.
think of like a chair that's just sitting there, like a red chair, and it has the potential to remain a red chair, which gets actualized at every moment. But we wouldn't say that's change occurring, right?
Okay, so a red chair, and it has the potential to remain a red chair.
Yeah, it has the potential to remain a red chair.
No. It wouldn't work like that. Remaining what it already is isn't potentiality. That's something is actually. If it remains what it is, it's actually a red chair, and it
Yeah,
continues its
it
state
is actually a
unless
red chair.
acted upon.
But it has the potential to stay the same, right?
No, the potentiality is the capacity to become something it is not yet.
Say that again.
Potentiality is the capacity to become something it is not yet.
Okay, so okay. Hold on. Okay, fine. So let's say that this view of like potential and actual, right? It assumes the falsity of like certain views, like eternalism. You know what the eternalism is?
There's it can mean multiple different things. I've heard,
Like the theory of time.
yeah, that time's eternal. That form of eternalism.
Yeah, like theory and stuff.
A theory and B theory. Yeah, I've heard of that. The argument.
No, not A theory.
Oh,
A theory.
B theory, B theory, and C theory.
Yeah, because everything would just be actual under that view. They just exist in different like temporal locations. So there would be no potential. And change on that view.
There would still be potential in B theory of time.
Not your definition of it.
Well, I guess, yeah, I guess it would be defined a little bit differently within B theory.
Like there wouldn't, bro. Zemar, you got so much background noise.
Dude,
Come on,
I keep muting him. Don't unmute.
Yeah, like it wouldn't be like a mode of being that goes from potency to act. There would be like a mode of being called potential that goes to act, and that's what changes. Everything would be actual, and change could be defined as something like something changes if it has property X at time t1 and not at time t2 or something.
Okay, well, if
Yeah.
we were talking B theory of time, right? Potentiality would be defined as like capable of being, and actuality would refer to a thing currently is or has become. Potentiality would still exist if you just say that there is, would still exist.
Is this different? Sorry, go on.
If you were to just say that there is just actuality, for example, like if we take a seed becoming a tree, and then the seed has no potential to become a tree, it can only become a seed as if it was always actualized. Therefore, it needs to be potentiality in order for it to become a tree.
Yeah, but under my view, I can account for a seed becoming a tree without this like potential thing, unless we're using a different.
Well, if potentiality means capable of being, and you're saying that the seed doesn't have isn't capable of being a tree, and actuality refers to a thing currently is or has become, and you're saying that the seed is just purely actual. For example, if I plant it right now in B theory of time, that seed right then and there, if you're saying it's actual, is already a tree in that time, versus that's not the case in an equally real time in the future it's a tree, but right now in this equally real time it's a seed.
It sounds like you're using a different like view of potential now. I thought you said that it was like a mode of being. That was your point.
It's if you affirm a different theory of time, it's a little different.
Yeah, because that would be the counter. Because like this, like a Aristotelian view of change, or like this Thomistic view of change, they commit themselves to different ontological, like ontological pluralism, right? Like potential is supposed to be its own mode of being, not just like a modal sense, like this could be this other thing or something like that, because that type of view is totally compatible with non-Aristotelian views and non-Thomistic views, stuff like that. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess it would kind of like stick with a certain theory of time. I understand what you're saying, yeah.
Because like I'm guessing where you're going from that is something like anything actual is actualized by another, like, or some, sorry, things only go from potency to act by being actualized by something already actual. Like there can't be an infinite regress of actualizers. Therefore, there's a first purely actual being. Are you trying to say something like that?
Yeah. Something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Like the change in the how you're using potential wouldn't work with that anymore. Because I can account for those. Huh?
Why not?
Because we're no longer talking about like some mode of being called potential and some mode of being called actual. And only things that are actual have causal power. And they bring potential things into another mode of being actual. Like we're just talking about things on a timeline and which point they're at in the timeline. On the other view, the at theory of change.
Say that again?
Because that was kind of a mouthful. Because we're no longer talking about things like actual things only have causal power, and they bring this mode of being called potency into act, and that's the only way that can happen. And then there's like, because instead, if we use the other view of potency, we're just talking about like an under B theory, like things on a timeline that are all actually, they're all actual, equally actual, just exist in different like spots of the timeline.
Yeah, but there would still be potential and actuality. Even if time,
I guess,
every moment in time is equally real.
Like you'd still have things that like something earlier on the timeline causes something later on the timeline. You still have that.
Yeah, I mean, it would just be like reframed in a sense of causal priority rather than temporal priority.
Okay, so then what would the new argument be? You don't have to give it formally. That's fine.
It would be like some things are actualized but not self-actualizing. Any actualization must be caused by something else that is already actual. An infinite regress of causal actualizers is metaphysically impossible, is metaphysically impossible. Therefore, there must be a first actualizer, one that is pure act and depends on nothing. This is what we call God.
Yeah, I guess I don't know what you would mean by pure act there. It's not the Aristotelian or Thomistic view of act. What does pure act mean?
I would say that pure act, if we're going into like the B theory lens, would, I mean, it's just something that's fully actual.
What does that mean exactly?
Like, there's no potentiality, causal dependencies, or contingency. It's like the ontological foundation for existence.
Okay. And potentially defined as it could be different, right? Something has potential if it could be different.
With B theory of time, potentiality would refer to like capable of being.
Capable of being?
Yeah.
Capable of being what? What do you mean?
Like just it's something's capable of being, but it's not yet. For example, or it's just capable of being. For example, like a seed would have potentiality in the sense it's capable of being a tree.
Okay. It's capable. Okay. I guess I'm trying to understand. So God is fully act. It's not capable. He's not capable of being anything else than he is.
No, if fully act, he would be fully act. actualized, unchanging.
Okay. And you just mean like no intrinsic change, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you can have like you know what Cambridge properties are?
No.
They're like external relations. Like God can change with respect to those properties, right?
Um, I would say that there couldn't be extrinsic change either.
Okay, I think you'd have to though, because like let's
Yeah.
say God has the property. Wait, what's your name?
Oh,
Bug. God has
yeah.
the property of being loved by Bug. If you like become an atheist tomorrow, then God would no longer have the property of being loved by Bug, and he would change. So, but what you really usually you want to say those are okay. Intrinsically, he doesn't change. Like those Cambridge properties can change. Like if I'm 6 foot, there's a 5 foot person. I have the property of being taller than them, but if they get knee surgery and become 6'1", they're taller than me. But I didn't really change. Just my relation to them changed a bit. You get that?
Yeah. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Okay. So I guess we could talk about an infinite regress. Why you think that's impossible?
Yeah. In terms of like B theory of time, or just in general?
Just in general, I guess for
Okay.
I guess for your argument, it would be an infinite causal regress.
Okay. So when it comes in a per se causal chain, basically like each cause has the power to cause because it is being caused by something else right now. For example, like if you imagine a series of gears where like every gear only turns because like the one before it is turning it. None of the gears can move unless there's something that starts or actualizes them to turn. Like a starting gear
Right.
turns. Um, if there was like if you think about like an infinite chain of these causes or gears with no first cause, then none of the causes would have an actual power to cause anything, or i.e. in the sense the gears to turn, because they're all dependent on something else for their causal power, but there's no source to give them the causal power.
Okay, what if I said, like, you could point to any gear and say, how is this one moving? It doesn't have the power to move intrinsically. It must have got it from something. How does this have the ability to move? And then I look at the previous gear. I think, oh, that one's moving it. Like that one's giving it the power to move. Right? Would you agree? The gear we originally point to, it's explained why it's moving.
Yeah,
Just that
it's
one.
moved by the just by that one gear. It's moved by the previous. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. And then we do the same for the previous gear. We look at that and we say,
Mm-hmm.
but how's that one moving? And we're like, oh, there's a gear before it and that's moving. Okay, now it's explained why that one's moving. And we keep doing that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those were the ones we point at. Okay, so you can do this for every gear. For every gear in the infinite chain of gears, there is a previous gear that is moving it. So then every gear in the chain would be explained as to why it's moving.
In an infinite regress.
Yeah.
Well, if there's an infinite amount of these, like without a first cause to give it power, then the infinite causes don't have anything to derive its causal power from. Like there has to be an ultimate source. Even if you go back with like the gear before it, the gear before it, the gear before that, ultimately what gives any of the gears its causal power to begin with, right? Like if you imagine an infinite amount of light bulbs, if there's no switch to give it power, we can keep adding more light bulbs. They're never going to have power or causal power. There has to be some source, ultimate source to give it. You could technically have like an infinite amount of causes in the sense of like a ray where there's a starting point, i.e. a first cause, and then there's infinite causes after that, where this first cause it gives it its power or causal power, gives the chain its causal power.
Okay, I'm gonna say one more thing, and then I'll let you get the last word, and then I gotta go.
All good.
There's something called. She asked, why is any gear moving, or why are all the gears moving, or something like that. There's something called the David Hume principle, which is a set of things explained if each member is explained. And there are like some examples, like if there are a bunch of like Christians on a street, like 5 Christians on a street corner, and we're like, why are there Christians on a street corner? And I point to the first one. I'm like, well, he's waiting for the bus to go to church. I point to the second one. He's waiting for his girlfriend to pick him up, and I point to the, and whatever. And then I go through each individual one. I explain all 5, and you go, okay, I get why that one's here. 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 And I get why that one's here. But why are there any Eskimos on the, or sorry, Eskimos, any Christians on the street corner? And then I just look at you like, what do you mean? I just explained all the individual ones. I explained the whole. And in the gear case, that's what the David Hume principle tries to say, is that if all the parts are explained, then that's all you need. So it's like, we look at one gear, oh, that's explained by the previous one. That one's explained. And you could do that for all gears. And then that's it. That's all. There's nothing more to explain there. But by the way, I love this stuff. This stuff's so interesting. So thanks for the combo. I'll let you get the last word. Whatever you want.
I mean, if you, with David Hume, like with David Hume's principle, I guess in principle, it would work, but it wouldn't be sufficient. Or like, if you hold his worldview, and his worldview it would work, but in reality, I would say it doesn't. Because first he denies causation involving metaphysical necessity, and that the whole needs a deeper explanation than its parts, right? In principle, it's really just if you imagine like cause A, cause B, and cause C, if we could just explain those 3, then therefore the entire thing's explained, which doesn't really, we wouldn't really say is efficient, and kind of undermines like PSR.
Okay, cool. I gotta go. I'll talk to you some other time.
Of course. God bless, brother.
What's up?
What's up?
Your existence is pointless.
Okay.
Yeah.
I saw that you're
That's like easily observable.
So I saw that you're gonna prove God is false. Is this like how you're gonna do it?
Yep.
So like, how's this prove God is false?
I can prove your God is false.
Okay.
So like, do you agree that God makes your existence pointless?
How is my
No,
existence
this is
pointless?
related.
This
This
is
is
like a
related.
loaded question.
No. This is related. Just trust me.
Well,
Do you
I
agree?
know, but this is like a loaded question.
It don't matter. Is it? It's
Yeah,
a yes
it
or
does,
no.
because if it's a fallacious, then it's an error in logic.
I mean, does God make your existence pointless? Yes or no?
This is a loaded question. It presupposes that my existence is pointless. What's the justification for that?
Is God omniscient? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, so if God knows all the possibilities and he knows that the end result of humanity is like 90% of us going to hell, he basically sent us to hell, which would make most people's existence pointless. He also knew he would have to sacrifice his own son. He basically did that for no reason. And he knew Satan was going to betray him. He already knew everything. So there's no point. It's all dumb.
So what's your argument? Is that like, if he's omniscient and knew that 90% of people would go to hell and he created them, then their existence was pointless?
Yeah. Do you believe in the rapture?
No, not like pre-trib rapture or anything like that.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. So, all right. So, yeah, everyone's existence is pointless then, under your worldview.
How so?
Yeah, if God is omniscient, then he already knows the end results of what everyone's going to do. And he already knows we're all going to fail. We're not going to listen to his words. So, Yeah,
What
there's
do you
no
mean
point.
he knows we're all gonna fail? What makes you
He
think we're all
put
gonna fail?
he okay. He already knows that we're all gonna sin, so there's no point.
But that doesn't mean we're not all gonna go to hell.
I mean, you could have said the same thing for when he like flooded the earth or something. Remember when there was like other people who were praying to God, but then most of them were bad? That's pretty much what's happening now. There's gonna be a point where we're all gonna, most of us are just gonna be bad.
Yeah, and
Yeah, so he's gonna have to flood us or something.
okay, like how's this disprove God?
It means that under your worldview, you believe your existence is pointless.
Why
You
would
just
my
won't admit
existence
it though.
why would my existence be pointless? Because
God already
because
God already knows the
people
end
go to
result of
hell,
humanity.
therefore their
He
existence
sacrificed
is
his son
pointless.
for no reason. He sacrificed his son for literally no reason. He already knew what would happen.
So if there were people that made it to heaven due to his son's sacrifice, then there would be a reason.
No, there's like hundreds of billions of people burning in hell like right now.
So you're saying even if people are that go to heaven because of the son's his son's sacrifice, that his son's sacrifice wasn't the reason?
Yeah, it would be better off if we just didn't exist.
How
I don't want to take
does
those
that,
chances, bro.
How does that logically follow? You're saying if people go to heaven because of the son's sacrifice, that's the reason they went. You're then saying the son's sacrifice wasn't the reason that they went to heaven at the same time.
Wait, what are you saying? Are you saying like, do you know what heaven and hell are?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, so hell is eternal torture.
No,
correct?
we don't affirm that. It's eternal separation, not torture.
Oh, but like the absence of God is like torture and like bad stuff, so might as well
it's
be.
the absence of his love. It's yeah.
And what's the opposite of God's love?
Just nothing. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how we could know that.
Yeah, the absence of God's love is like really bad. It's scary to think about. So, yeah, I would rather prefer, even if it's one person who went to heaven over his sacrifice, I wouldn't want to take those chances because hell isn't a good place. It would be better off if we just didn't exist.
How does this disprove God, dude?
It disproves your religion and your weird faith.
How so?
Because you disagree that your existence is pointless. I just proved it was. Also, heaven and hell don't make sense.
You just made the claim that it was pointless. You didn't really.
No, I proved it.
Based upon
God sacrificed his son for no reason.
a subjective opinion.
No, God sacrificed his son for no reason. That's true.
Based upon your subjective opinion.
No, based upon like logic, he's omniscient, so he already knew like other options, but he still sacrificed his son for no reason.
Why was it for no reason if it ended up saving people?
He could have like done something else. He didn't have to do that.
I mean,
do you at least agree with that?
No.
Wow.
I would argue that if God is a perfect being, then whatever decision he made was the best possible decision.
How could that be the best? That's not even close to being the best possible
this
decision.
is really just based upon like human limitation, which is kind of like a form of the gods of the gas fallacy or argument from ignorance.
So he let his son die. He was sacrificed, and to you, that was the best decision.
Because it's the decision of a perfect being, yeah.
But God, okay, did God flood the earth?
Locally. I believe locally he did.
Why did he do that?
Apart from I can only go with what the Bible says. The corruption.
Exactly. So did God make a mistake with the flooding, or like
No,
so
because
God
he's a
already
perfect
knew?
being.
No. Why would he give them a chance to live and like experience stuff and free will, then take it away and get mad at them for having free will?
He didn't get mad at them for having free will. He got mad.
Yes, he did.
He got mad at them for choosing to do wrong and reject him.
What? That's the whole point of his promise.
What do you mean that's the whole point of his promise?
It doesn't matter if I want to do evil stuff. I have free will. That's what he gave me. That's God's love, correct?
He gave you free will in order for us to have true love and for our good actions to have meaning, to have a real relationship with him.
Yeah, but I can choose not to. That's the beautiful part. I don't want to be a robot.
Yeah, but if you choose not to, then you're rejecting God, and he tells you not to do that.
What? So he gives me free will, but he also tells me the things I should do and not do.
He gives free will because it's necessary for a true relationship and true love, and your actions to be meaningful, your good actions to be meaningful, and then he tells you to use this gift properly and to follow him. And if you just misuse the gift, that's completely on you.
It's not. You can't misuse free will. He gave it to me so I can do bad stuff.
No.
That's
where does the Bible ever say he gave you free will so you could do bad stuff?
It says he gives us the right to choose. That's close enough. That's literally the same thing.
Where does it say that he gave you free
will
will just so that you could be able to do bad stuff?
Choose. Okay, he says choose, or like you can choose your actions. That's the same thing.
And he wills for you to do good with that. Choose to do good.
That doesn't really matter. He gave me free will. I'm gonna do what I want.
So that
and if he tries to breach it, then he would sin, because he would contradict himself.
No, where would the contradiction be?
So he gives us
free will is the freedom to choose. It's not the
Yes, exactly.
Choose without
freedom
punishment.
To choose.
It's never been the freedom to do without punishment.
Yeah. Okay, but freedom to choose, right?
Okay. So if he punished you for that, then it's not a contradiction or breach.
He can't punish us when he gave us. Okay, so if your
it's
parents
the freedom to choose.
Okay, how about
but
this?
Not in the sense of, but you can still be punished for it.
Okay, let me give you an
analogy. Same thing with, for example, the freedom of speech. I can speak, but there's limit.
It's not free will. It's not free will. If your parents buy you a house and they say you can do whatever you want with this house,
in your
do
sense,
whatever
yeah,
you want with this house.
Free will.
And then I blow up the house.
Way.
Then I blow up the house and they get mad at me. Then I never had a choice.
It's not. Yeah, free will can be defined in different ways.
So he gives us free will, but if we do bad stuff, he can take it away. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, free will, as the Bible would define it, or what would align with the biblical or the Bible, is like a God-given ability of humans to be able to like choose between good or evil, life or death, or like to love God or to reject him, and to be held morally accountable for those choices.
In the afterlife.
What do you mean in the afterlife?
I think you should be held morally accountable in the afterlife. If God intervenes in the physical world, then he would be sinning.
Thank you for sharing what you think. But
no, it's true.
Oh, the Bible supports
it would
that?
be a breach of contract. It's God's word.
Where's the contract that says it's only a judgment in the afterlife?
Says is basically a contract.
Where is the contract that says that?
He says he gives you freedom to choose. God says that, the one above all.
And
he
then
says, I give you freedom to choose.
Does he say that's
do it?
The freedom to choose without punishment or being held morally accountable? No. The Bible says the exact opposite the entire freaking book, dude.
I shouldn't be judged in the physical world. That makes no sense. I should be judged in the afterlife.
According to your own opinion. Not what the Bible says.
So God can just breach his contract?
He never made that contract to begin with. I'm still asking for where he made that contract where you could do whatever you want and only be judged in the afterlife.
Whatever God speaks is a contract, whether you want to believe that or not. It's the word above all. So you're saying God lied?
When did he lie?
If he says, I give you freedom to choose, and then he takes that away, then that would be a lie.
He didn't. That's literally an argument from silence, dude.
What do you mean?
He said he gave you the freedom to choose. That doesn't mean that it wasn't a freedom to choose without being held morally accountable. And that's obvious because if you knew any hermeneutics and read the entire Bible in context, throughout the entire Bible, people are held morally accountable for those choices. So it's
That
the
doesn't make
ability to
sense.
choose between
So then you don't have. So then you can't
good
choose.
or
You can't.
evil, and to be held morally accountable for those choices.
Okay, so you don't have freedom to choose. You're forced to do the right thing under God's eyes.
You have the freedom to choose, but you
No,
will be
you
held
don't.
morally accountable for those choices.
No, you shouldn't be. Why should God have to interfere? I'm in the physical world. He gave me a right to choose.
If you did
I should be able to do what I want up until I die.
If you used his gift the way for the reasons he gave you it, then he wouldn't be doing it.
So
But
then we
since
would
you
just better
misuse
we
your
would
gift,
just be
you get
better
judged.
off. We would better off just be being robots then. If he's gonna interfere, there's no point.
What do you mean there's no point?
Cause he says I get okay, even with consequence, even like it. Okay, I don't know. You know what? I'm just gonna leave.
Okay.
All right, bye.
Okay. All right, let's bring up Haunt.
Hey, I just heard what happened.
Yeah.
So that guy, I mean, yes, he does understand. God gives us free will, but at the end, the enemy takes us away from the gift of going towards God. And I agree with you because the more someone is going to do whatever they want, and the more sinful things, the more they're going to be more separate, and the time comes and it's going to be too late. So that's why, even though, yes, I agree with you, we have free will, but I just think he doesn't understand that there is consequences, because for eternity, but also sin isn't going to help you at all. So, especially in this world right now.
Exactly.
Because I'm technically saved. Now I would say technically, but I had people telling me, I was baptized years ago, but I had to get one again, because I'm a Christian for 2 months now, and I accepted, Jesus, and I would say I received the Holy Spirit, because like the signs, you probably, I don't know if you have it, but you know the signs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So like the warm sensations, the peace, the fruits, I already know I have it. So people are like, well, what kind of consider? I'm like, well, I wasn't feeling like this before, so why do I feel it now?
Yeah.
But no, I mean, that's the thing, like, and I think it's scary for not only that, like, we're trying to save people as much as we can, spreading the gospel, but at the time comes, it's going to be too late, because we don't know when Jesus is coming back. We just have to keep the faith in him, and God is the only one that knows, and it's going to be too late for people to repent. And people who don't have the belief in Jesus, they're going to see him, like he's going to come back down, and they're going to like see him face to face. And it's like, what can you say to that? Like, it's just crazy. Like, God is like Jesus himself is the beyond King of Kings, and there's just like, I feel like there's proof of his evidence, of historical evidence from the Bible and from the resurrections of people witnessing him, going and 500 people and seeing ascend him to heaven. So you can't say that God is not real.
I mean, it's not hard to understand why, in the time of what Jesus was written, it's not hard to understand why Jesus was. I mean, I was raised a Christian, but to say that's evidence, it was during a time where Jewish people were looking for a Messiah, and Rome was their enemy. They were looking for a Messiah that would defeat their enemy, and then basically Rome gave them Jesus, turn the other cheek Messiah, pay Rome what you would, pay Rome what you owe them, or treat Romans as your gods on earth. This is basically what Jesus is saying. That Rome gave the Jews this. They're saying, do not look for a Messiah that will defeat us. This is your Messiah, the Jesus, to turn the other cheek. So stop these wars. It was a time during Jewish Roman wars. So That's not really evidence. If you look into history, you understand why the New Testament was written in Greek and the Old Testament was written in Hebrew and Aramaic and things of this nature.
Yeah.
People put a new religion onto something else. Yeah.
J-Rel, you wanted me to prove God to you?
Yes, you're talking about the Christian God?
Yeah.
Okay.
I can run you through the premises. Premise 1, things in the universe are in motion, motion meaning change. Premise 2, nothing moves itself. Premise 3, a chain of movers can't go on infinitely in a per se causal chain. Premise 4, there must be a first mover that isn't moved by someone else. Premise 5, the conclusion, the first mover is what we call God.
So you're saying God always existed?
Yeah.
Hold on. You say something can't come into motion without something moving it?
Mm-hmm.
So how did God always exist?
Outside of that.
No, but
That's
you
what
said,
premise 4 says.
but your premise, I know, but your premise, one of your premises underlines the other premise. If nothing could move without something else moving it, then God could not exist. It could not have always existed because something else would have made him exist, according to your premise.
No. Premise 4 says there must be a first mover that isn't moved by someone else. There's a logical reason as to why there has to be something that is
Well,
unmoved.
if there is something unmoved, then it could just be the universe. It doesn't have to be your God, but your premise
The
does.
argument is just that there has to be a first mover or first cause. Now you could
Right, it could
affirm
be
that
the
it's
universe.
the Christian God, the Muslim God, the universe, or whatever. The point of the argument is to prove that there's a first mover, first cause.
Okay, well, what my thing with the Christians and the Abrahamic guys and all of this thing, it's they believe consciousness existed and then created the universe. I believe the universe created consciousness. It's a bottom up procedure. It's not a top down procedure. And then they say God is all loving, and they also this is what Christians say. They say God is all loving, and Jesus is innocent, and it's unjust to unalive the innocent. If God is all loving, unaliving Jesus, who was the only innocent person, would be unjust. But they don't connect those dots. And if God is all loving and all powerful, no one would have to be alive for a sacrifice. All he would have to do is just forgive. And you're talking about sins that people are just born into sin, because just basically the original sin was Adam and Eve. So whoever their descendants were just born into it. So it's no fault of their own. If this God was all loving and all powerful, no one would need to unalive and sacrifice themselves to him. All would have to happen is he would just have to forgive. He wouldn't even have to forgive because he wouldn't say that those are sins. You can't be born into sin if you're all loving person.
How does this relate to the argument?
I'm disproving the Christian God. I mean,
let's address the argument. It's not the topic right now. We can get into that after. What do you disagree with the premises, or do you agree
that I mean, one of your premises it destroys the other. I mean, if everything has to have a mover, then God will have to have a mover. Otherwise, it makes no sense. You're just giving him special privileges for what?
There's special privileges for logical reasons, like for example, premise 3, a chain of movers can't go on infinitely in a per se causal chain. If things are actually moving, and these things can't go on infinitely, and therefore there must be a first mover that isn't moved by something else.
If you give that special privilege for anything, it should have evidence for it. The only thing that we do have evidence
I
for
can
is
justify
nature
that
and
logic
reality.
there.
No, but the thing that we have evidence for is nature and reality, the universe. We have evidence for the universe.
I can prove
We have no evidence for supernatural.
Well, I mean, there is evidence supernatural.
This
so-
argument
Yeah.
would be a proof if you agree with the premises. So you're basically saying that special pleading based on premise 2, saying nothing moves itself.
Yeah, you're giving God special pleading, but if you want to give anything special pleading, it would have to be the universe that we observe,
Do you know what
or you
like
would have to prove
special
God.
pleading is?
Yes, you're saying
Okay, what is special pleading?
you're giving it this special privilege that nothing else has.
No, special pleading is when you give an exemption to the rule without a logical or justified reason. For example, if I just said that the first mover isn't moved by anything else, just because, or I didn't give a logical reason as to why there'd be special pleading, but I can provide a logical reason to
Oh,
why a first mover.
what makes it special pleading is you're giving it to God with no evidence of God. We have evidence of the universe. If you want
I'm
to,
giving
if
it
you
to
want
the
to say
first mover,
right with
which
no
I
evidence
prove
of the
the
first mover,
argument proves deductively.
you're implementing this first mover
Okay.
into the equation. You're saying
Where
that
am I
it exists.
implementing this first mover
Yeah, what are you
like
talking
in
You're
an
about?
giving it
illogical manner?
because if you say it's just a if it's amorphous, then okay. But you're giving it. You're saying this is God.
This is what we
Maybe
call
it's.
God. We
How do you know
understand
it's
the
not
first
the
mover is
universe?
God.
But how do you know it's not the universe?
Because
For
it's
example, the universe doesn't have the necessary attributes to be
Why?
the first cause. So
Why?
the premise 4 says there must be a first mover that isn't moved by something else, meaning
Mm-hmm.
this first mover is unchanging, or what we call immutable. The universe is changing; it's constantly expanding. It was it's there's constantly new planets, galaxies, there's chemical reactions going on,
Mm-hmm.
etc. It can't be the first cause or first mover because the first mover is unchanging. It's the unmoved mover.
Okay, and the God you believe, right? It existed before anything else existed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then it changed and created things, right?
No, it never changed.
So why did things exist now when it didn't used to exist?
Qua the first cause, because of the first cause.
I'm asking you why did things used to not exist and then things started to exist?
Because the
Did God?
first cause created eternally.
But according to the Bible, God wanted someone to love or something, right? He wanted a special creation, right?
Because we're all his creators, so that's
Okay,
why.
so before we existed, that's not what he was worried about. Then he started being worried about that, right?
Well,
Started
because
about
No,
that.
it never said he
in the
wasn't
Bible,
worried about that previously.
because
So
in
why
the
didn't we exist
Bible,
previously?
In fact, the reason the Bible gives for creation is that he wanted that, right? Before
Yes,
creation.
right. So
Okay,
before
so
creation,
before
why?
creation he was worried about it.
Okay, so before creation, he was worried about it. Why didn't we exist before creation?
Because before creation means we weren't created yet. Nothing was created yet.
Why not?
I mean, what kind of question is that you're asking? What do you mean, why not?
Because yes, if God is never changing, you're saying there was a time when things started to exist because he made it exist. But before then, things didn't exist. So if he doesn't change, things would have been the exact same way, not existing, except him.
No, so God, or the first cause would have an eternal will to create that has a temporal effect.
Why?
Why? Otherwise,
Yeah.
because he doesn't change. So if his act wasn't eternal, meaning outside of time, unchanging, then there would be a change.
You're just begging the question for real. But
How's that begging the question? You just asked why. I gave a logical reason as to
no,
why.
you didn't. You're saying because he's unchanging, therefore he
Because
always
the
felt
first
this
mover
way.
can't change. So since the first mover can't change, he has to have always been creating.
Then if
Without
he
change.
was always creating, then things would have always existed. But you're saying there was a
His
time when
eternal
things
will had
didn't.
a temporal effect.
Hmm?
His
Again,
eternal
you're
will,
saying
his will to create, his act of creating had a temporal effect.
Yes, but if he always wanted things to exist, things would have always existed. But he didn't want. That means he didn't want things to always exist if things didn't exist at one point in time. Once it started existing, that's when he wanted things to exist.
What? He eternally
No,
willed to create, and that eternal will had a
I didn't.
temporal effect.
So why didn't he create things for all time
I mean, that's
before
something we can't know.
We
Okay,
don't. How are we supposed to know, Jarrell? If it's not, you can time travel and go back in time.
I'm just saying he changed. Before it was nothing, and then there was something.
I get it. I understand, but only, like I said, only God is the only one that knows. We don't know, and only
Mhm.
that, God knows before we were in the womb, so He knows everybody. So, because He does that, He is the powerful one in this whole universe, and like you said, the experience of like supernatural things. And I just told the host, and I technically it's not. I mean, technically it's a testimony. And I love how and Bugs loves all. I love how people. I mean, it's a good thing I'm sharing my testimony, but it's so funny how some people think I say quote unquote I have psychosis. I'm like, yeah, sure I do. Okay, so um now with like people saying like, oh, God doesn't exist and stuff, then for you said supernatural. So, do you believe like evil spirits?
No,
So, okay. So it's just so my boyfriend's the same thing. I already told him what happened to me. I already told him everything, my testimony, and so how can I say this? Because I'm a new Christian, so I was the same thing with like you. I was an atheist, I can say, and I went to Christ for 2 months for the first time. And you know how we have worldly things right now. I was around that. And I decided through all my stuff I had. Now, the things I had in my room, I had a big pentagram rug in my carpet and I threw it away. Like most of the dark stuff. And Bugs love all. I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding, Bugs. I literally got like spiritual attacks on my home. And I had to call my classmate from college, and I told him I couldn't be in the house because like I'm scared. And I told my boyfriend I knew what it was and what it meant, because at the same time he doesn't believe in like the bad spirits and demons. And it's so funny, but like I experienced this since I was a kid, so like all these things are not made up because it happened to me. So it's technically like actual like say proof from me, because I was the same thing where I believed there were ghosts and bad spirits, but when I witnessed it for myself at my house, that's when I realized it was a wake up call. And
you're already open to it. But anyone in any religion could believe the same thing. I'm not trying to take your experiences away,
no,
because
I
I'm
get
not
it.
against religion at all. But yeah, but any religious person of any different sect of any religion could say the exact same things you're saying.
Well, I know, but the same thing is that I wasn't into Christianity. Like, don't get me wrong. Like before, I was kind of, I want to say, like I wasn't against Christianity, but I just didn't like the people who were teaching certain ways. And I kind of see it now where, and don't get me wrong, there is hypocrisy in Christianity, but I'm not looking at the religion itself. I'm looking at the relationship with Jesus himself, as you know. And
He's a good teacher.
what happened?
So yeah, Jesus is a good teacher.
No, I mean, I accepted him as my Lord and Savior, and I pretty much was saved. So, I mean, no wonder I was getting attacked in my home, because the dark stuff I had, the negative energies around my house, and I had things falling down and moving around by itself, and I was like, I can't do this more. And I now have to lock my door every day before I go to sleep.
Yeah, but isn't it funny though? The people that don't believe in those things, it doesn't happen to them.
That's what I'm saying. Like, you know why? Because they're in still in darkness. So when I was in darkness at the time with the things I had and was around,
I don't know what to
I
do.
didn't look at there was a light, or can say. And when I finally, the more I was praying every day, night and morning, the more I was reading the Bible, that's when it kind of triggered it. And because we all know the enemy does not like to have people going to Christ. So also how spiritual warfares were temptations and convictions were around. So like it kind of shocked me because I never knew things were happening to me when I'm home alone with no one else. And I told my boyfriend, "Hey, my canvas fell by itself for 2 years, and never fell." He's like, "Oh, it's just probably a nail." I was like, first of all, if it was the nail, then why my canvas fell all of a sudden though? If I was, watching The Chosen, I think I was, but like it's crazy because like,
You know what I really think it is?
mm,
You're an intelligent. You're one of the species that's a very intelligent animal, and your imagination could view a ghost or a super powerful being. If like say the bushes rustle at night, and your brain could go to something super powerful or something supernatural because you're a very intelligent being. Your brain could do that.
Okay.
Probably a lot of other creatures are thinking it's just danger, but we
well,
are
Well,
intelligent creatures and we use
the
that.
thing,
let's get back on topic.
yeah,
I don't want
let's
to get
go.
too far. And
Yeah.
real quick, real truth. If you said if you can't explain the processes he used and how do you know he did it? I mean, I can logically prove something. For example, that like as I did with the first mover existing and these types of things, and we can logically show that it would have to be he had to have to
He
create
didn't
and be
say that, but
unchanging,
go ahead.
etc. Now explaining the exact mechanics, we don't as to like, or for example, why did he create at this specific time? Why did he add in free will and that type of stuff? That's what we would call like an epistemic limitation, which we wouldn't have to. It's just something we don't know, but that doesn't mean there's no reason or that's a problem. Like logically, we can we can understand or say that we don't know the mechanics if something works as long as we can prove that it did happen, and this is like it would logically have to be this way.
But that's why God is so prominent, because there are things we don't know, and then people try to put the all-powerful being there in order to answer that question of what we don't know.
Yeah. Well, I mean that would be God to the Gats fallacy, which
Yes, which this is.
well, how is the argument I brought a God to the Gats fallacy?
Because again, what you're saying could be the universe, the unmovable.
No, it can't,
Why?
because the first cause can't change. It's fully actualized. The universe changes. For
How
change to
does it?
occur, at it right, nothing moves slash changes itself, and for change to be able to occur, that means it would have to have potentiality.
Okay, why
Um,
can't the first mover? Why can't it change? What do we? I don't
because
even.
change is the move from a state of potential to actual. If the
Yeah.
first mover, for the first mover to be fully actualized, right, means it has no potential, so it couldn't change. There would be no potential for it to change into.
But I mean, I guess that would depend on really what change is. I mean, what do you?
That's what
What
change
if,
is. Change is the
because,
move from potential to
but the
actual.
thing is, you can't create nor destroy matter. So it depends on what do you mean
According to
by
what we
change.
know about empirical science.
Okay, so
But
what
an
we
all
know.
powerful being could.
Okay, yes, of course, an all-powerful being can do anything. It's possible for any all-powerful being to do any single thing ever. But what we know is, you're saying change. You can't. What we know is from what we know, you can't create nor destroy matter. And you're saying change. It depends on what do you mean by change. It's still the matter that you crushed. That stuff is still there. It's still around. So it changed to something else, but it's still there. It's so it. I just guess it depends on what you mean by change. It can't change. I don't under. I mean, it still matter.
What?
But you're saying it can't change. It depends on what you mean by change. That That's what I'm like. What do you mean it can't change? I don't know. I'm trying to
Okay,
say,
so for the
yeah.
there, if there was for example, obviously, do you know what PSR is?
What's that?
It's the principle sufficient reasoning. It's we hold that there has to be sufficient reason for everything. For example, with the first cause, if it had potentiality in order for it to change, there would have to be a sufficient reason as to why it has potentiality.
Mhm.
Um, if there was a logical reason, for example, such as X, then that means X would be the first cause, since the first cause is the terminus meaning the explanation for everything, and not in something that's not dependent. If it had an explanation, the first cause did, it wouldn't be the terminus, and instead X would be. So that means that X would actually be the first cause. So ultimately, the first cause would have to be fully actualized, couldn't have any potentiality.
I mean, what if nothingness was unstable? So that's the first cause.
What do you mean? What if nothing? If there was nothing, then that means there would be nothing to be unstable. Nothing is the lack of anything. So how could the lack of anything be unstable?
I mean, I can't say a dark hole is the lack of anything. That's a lot of um. I can't think of a name right now. I'm drunk, but no. What if what if there is no way that nothing can exist? Like something has to always exist. What if that's the case? And then that something doesn't have to have consciousness. Consciousness could be created from the ground up from
Well,
that's
it would
energy.
have to have consciousness.
Why?
Um, Couple things. So
Hold on. Did humans have to have consciousness for life to exist on Earth?
no, but humans aren't the first cause.
I'm saying, but it seems like, well, I believe in evolution. It seems like evolution is more ground up. The universe created living organisms. It doesn't seem like living organisms created the universe. It seems the other way around. It seems a bottom up process instead of a top down process.
What?
But yeah, it seems that the universe created living organisms, but not purposely. It's not like saying the universe created suns. It's just the way the universe is suns formed, planets formed, living organisms
No.
formed.
So the the first cause is not the reason it would have to be non-conscious is basic. The first cause is not bound by anything or any other causes. It determines and acts in accordance to itself. To be
Is
able
the
to
first
do
cause
this, it would
conscious?
have to be conscious. A non-conscious first cause couldn't act on its own because it would be dependent on other things to act. It wouldn't have a will, an intellect, or an internal principle of action. Internal principle
Well,
of
that's
action means the ability to initiate without being initiated.
well, that's crazy to me because the only conscious we ever see are in sentient beings. These are creatures with matter. Like you, it's like saying there could be digestion without a stomach. You need matter, a stomach, to digest. You need a brain to have consciousness. You need sensory organs. You need these things in order to be conscious. You can't have these. You can't not have these things and be conscious. Like you can't have no stomach and digest. It's not a thing.
In the
The
sense
consciousness is the
in the sense
product of
of
a brain.
humans,
In the sense
but
of
that
all
doesn't.
living creatures, consciousness is the process of a brain of sensory organs.
With
There's
contingent
no we've
physical
never seen
beings,
consciousness, but
but
we've
the
never
first
seen
cause is a
consciousness without.
metaphysical, like, fully actualized being. What?
Yes, but you guys are saying this, but we've never seen consciousness with outside of a
That
sentient.
doesn't matter. That's an argument for ignorance or just a form of a God's Gats fallacy.
What?
You're
No.
arguing because we haven't seen this, it's therefore not true.
Yes,
When we
I
could
need evidence
logically
of it
prove
to
something.
believe.
I
Yeah, I need
logically
evidence
showed
of
that
it.
it would have to be consciousness because to be non-conscious means something doesn't have awareness, no principle of internal act, and is triggered by things outside of itself. The first cause, if it was triggered by things outside of itself, would need a cause outside of itself. Therefore, it can't be the first cause. The first cause is the unmoved mover. It needs to trigger itself. It can't be triggered by things outside of itself.
If it triggers itself, then it changed. If it triggered itself into creating things, it changed.
It
Because
would
before
it
then,
would do so in an eternal manner. Now the exact mechanics of how that works is something that we don't know, or at least from the orthodox position, since we don't put terms or try to explain the mechanics like more like Thomists do and the Catholics do. We don't know the exact mechanics, but that's not a logical problem.
well, it just seems to me that consciousness comes from a brain. And we know it comes from a brain because of sensory organs. Because
Based on
of,
our own observations.
yes, and if there's
But
evidence of something else, then I would need evidence of that thing in
I
order to believe.
provided a logical
But
justification
it's
as to why it would
illogical.
have to be this case. You already agreed that there has to be a first mover.
But but it's illogical because how can you have consciousness without matter?
I mean, we
What
would just
sensory
chalk that
organs
up
does he
to
have?
a limitation in human knowledge. You're asking the exact mechanics of something. We can explain like the why as to like the how. That's something that's just a limitation of human knowledge. But you already affirmed that there is a first mover, and I gave the logical justification as why the first mover would have to be conscious. Otherwise, it would require something outside of itself. Therefore, it's not the
No,
first mover.
no. Even when you're saying it has to be conscious, you're still proving that it changed. You said it triggered itself in order to change, in order to start creating things. So you're saying it has to be unmovable or something outside
Its
itself.
source of cause, its ability to create is within itself. It's not dependent on anything else. Now, the exact
Okay.
mechanics as to how it did that without changing is something we don't know, but that's not a problem logically. As long as we can justify exactly the reasons why it would have to be this way, when it comes to the exact mechanics and how it works, that's something we don't have to know for it to be true.
But if your knowledge is limited, your logic could be off, right?
No, your logic could be off, but I logically justified these things deductively.
Yes, but again,
No, in a deductive argument is an argumentation where the premises have a necessary conclusion. So
right, and
if
if
you
your
affirm the
premises,
premises, then the conclusion is necessary. That's not a limitation in logic or something like, oh, we could figure
you're
it out
concluding
later
that your
on.
premises are true.
No, that it's not like that at all. These things are absolutes.
Yeah, but a presupposition is assuming that your premises are true. Like
I
that.
logically justified my reasons and my premises to show that they're true, and you agreed with them.
Even your own what you're saying is you're saying it cannot be moved, but then you're saying it triggered itself, and you're saying before things existed, things didn't exist, and then it decided to make things exist, so it did change, so it did move. So even your own argument just disproves itself.
It has an internal principle of act, which means it initiates by itself the exact, and we know also.
Which we could say about nature.
I gave a justified reason as to that. We also know that it can't change, and I provided justifiable reasons to that. Now you're asking for the exact mechanics on how that works, which is something we don't know, but that's not a problem.
If it can't change, things would not exist. In order for things to exist, because you're saying the thing.
You're arguing because I don't know the exact mechanics about something due to an epistemic limitation, that therefore
I'm arguing your logic.
It doesn't make sense. If you're arguing my logic, then the way you would do it is by showing logically how it would have to be this way, either by, for example, showing that a first cause can change, or by showing that a first cause can logically be non-conscious. Not based upon asking me how these mechanics work and how it does it without changing.
No, I'm disproving your point because you're saying that it can't change, but also that it existed before time and things didn't exist, and then it changed and started creating things. So even your own logic disproves itself that it can't change. The first mover can't change. Your own logic disproves that because
How did
it
my
didn't
own
exist, and then
logic
it
disprove
consciously
that?
made a because it things didn't exist, and then this consciousness made a conscious decision to start making things exist. If it always wanted things to exist, things would have always existed.
What is your logical argument?
Going off what you're saying, man, it's not logical to if you want if a consciousness if you, everything that you're saying that the first mover can't change and God never changed, but it also existed before things were created, and then it decided to create things. If it made a decision to create things, it changed its mind. That's what a decision is.
You're
It's just
at
a
you're
decide.
you're going on to the mechanics as to how this works, which is just which
Yes,
it's
I'm
not an
going
argument,
into your
dude.
logic.
Us not being able to explain the mechanics of something doesn't mean that therefore
But we can
it's
understand
something
the
that's not true. A, because that's an argument from ignorance. B, because I logically proved and justified why it would have to be unchanging, why it would have to be X and Y. And
okay, but if that is true, then that disproves God. If it has to be unchanging, that
no,
means
your argument
yes.
as to why it disproves God is because I can't explain the mechanics behind something, which is an argument from ignorance. Or just a form of the gods of the gas fallacy. That's the same thing as if I like,
Or maybe you
oh, we
can't.
can explain how this part of the brain works, therefore God. Like, this is
Maybe
just
you can't
that type of
explain it because
argumentation.
there is no explanation. Maybe you're saying that it cannot
You're
change.
literally arguing an argument from ignorance. Because I can't explain something, therefore it's not true.
Maybe you can't explain it because there is no explanation. Maybe that's
Dude, this
it.
is just an argument from ignorance and just appealing to mysticism. Maybe this, maybe that.
You can call any. Come on. All right.
Can you
I'll let somebody.
explain to okay, how about this? Can you explain to me like the compound, like tell me every compound in the brain?
I don't know every compound in the
Oh,
brain.
okay. So therefore, since you don't know that, God's real.
No, we can get someone to.
So
We can
because
look
you
that
can't
up. That's on
explain
Google
something,
somewhere.
that doesn't mean it's not true? Or like, for example, since you can't explain how the compounds in the brain doesn't exist.
No, we can look
Okay.
it up.
Okay. So it's not just because you can't explain something doesn't mean
Compounds
something
do
isn't
exist,
true.
but the compounds do exist.
So you're using that same thing to argue against me.
But you have no evidence of the existence. But we know
I
compounds do
gave
exist.
you a
We have evidence
deductive
of it.
argument that you agreed to the premises to. You already
Huh?
affirmed the argument.
But it disproves what you say is God.
How,
I'm gonna
how
let
does it
somebody else
disprove?
talk.
Without using an argument from ignorance, how does it disprove my argument?
I already explained it. If it's unmoving and it can't move, that means it couldn't be consciousness.
How so?
If the claim is this consciousness existed before time and it can't be changed, but also it existed before time and then it started creating things, you're saying it changed because if it always wanted things to exist, things would have always
So
existed.
you're
It would
arguing
it would not have
your
made a
entire
decision.
argument is based on us not being able to explain the mechanics of something. That's just an argument from ignorance.
No, I am explaining the mechanics, and I'm my fault.
Hey, we're getting nowhere. Let's bring up user.
Hey, what's up, man?
What's up?
Can I ask you first what religion you are?
Eastern Orthodox Christian.
Eastern how does that differ from Protestant?
Protestants are a heretical group that reject the infallible church Christ established and apostolic teaching.
Okay, so you're pretty much a Christian, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Do you believe homosexuality is wrong?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So Can you prove? First of all, I want to preface by just saying that I'm agnostic, right? Not atheist, but I am atheist leaning, so I don't really believe that the version of God that you guys preach, Christians preach, is a true God. There might be a higher power, right? But I don't think it's the God you guys preach is idolatry. It's not believing in a higher power, it's believing in a figure, right? So can you prove to me that your religion, Eastern Orthodox Christianity, is, right?
Well, if you're making the claim that it's idolatry, you'd have to justify that claim.
Oh, you guys preach a figure. You guys praise and worship a figure, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, but how is that idolatry?
How is that idolatry? Because you guys are preaching a figure.
Yeah,
You guys are idolizing a figure.
Are we going like what the Bible defines idolatry as, or
Adultery?
idolatry?
Idolatry. How does the Bible define idolatry? I mean, it doesn't really matter how the Bible. I mean, is the Bible a dictionary?
Well, I mean, where's your like basis for what's the definition of an idol or idolatry?
Okay, you want me to search it up? The
Sure.
definition. Okay, well, give me 1 sec. I think if I like leave TikTok, it like pauses. So give me 1 sec.
Idolatry. I mean, I guess I guess you could say like biblically the definition of idolatry would be like the worship of a false god, just in like the most general summed up way.
Well, luckily, we don't use the Bible as our dictionary when teaching in schools.
Yeah.
So we have our, a general definition for idolatry, and it is the worship for a physical object as a deity, right, or a god, right? And that's what I see as Jesus Christ. So Paul Tillich, a philosopher and existentialist, believed that modern religion is going the wrong direction, and it is more idolatry than an actual religion, where he believed that a higher power could be a concept and not a figure, like God, who is omnipotent and also conscious.
So going by that definition, like
Mhm.
an image or representation of a god used as an object of worship.
Yeah.
What within orthodoxy, we wouldn't be worshiping idols because we don't worship an image or representation of God. We worship the hypostases who have the ousia, who are God. We don't worship the man Christ or images of Christ or anything like that.
No, you guys have an image of what God is. You guys have an image of God in your head, and that's what you worship. That's
No,
idolatry.
we worship.
We're not talking about.
We don't give latria to physical images.
No, I'm not saying you're gonna be on your knees praising the fucking Jesus painting on your wall. I'm saying you have an image of what you believe God to be, and that's what you worship. So can you prove that your concept, your conceptualization of God, your visualization of what God is the right one?
So basically, just prove Christianity.
I mean, that's kind of the point of the live, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, the point of the live was to prove God to atheists, but not Christianity. But yeah. I mean, I would just pull what the Connectleys pull and just argue that humans do not. With what we have in recorded human history, we know that humans do not die for a lie they themselves made up. So since the apostles and the eyewitnesses of Christ died for this, and it would point towards them telling the truth.
Because we have eyewitnesses in the book, in the Bible, right? That is proof that the Bible is the word of God.
Because from what we have in recorded human history and what we know about humans, that humans do not die for a lie they themselves made up. And if the eyewitnesses of Christ were lying, then they would be dying for their lie they themselves made up, And since we know from what we have of recorded human history, humans do not do that. It would give validity to
Actually,
their
we have a
claim.
lot of events in history. Actually, some of them pretty recent within the last century where humans die in a cult. They commit suicide and they
Are
die
they the
for
ones
a false
making
lie.
up that lie and then dying for
Yes.
that lie?
Yes.
Okay, so give me an example, like who did that?
No problem. Wait, this is one I forgot. It was like something gate to heaven or something like that. Let me search it up real quick. One sec. Okay, Heaven's Gate. Search it up.
Yeah, so with the leader of Heaven's Gate, or what's
Right.
the like who in Heaven's Gate made a lie themselves. They made it up and then they died for it.
All of the cult members, they all committed suicide based on the lie.
So they believed in the lie.
Yes.
They didn't make up the lie themselves. Like they themselves
No,
didn't make it.
they literally made it up themselves at committing suicide.
What's the evidence for that?
What's the evidence? There's multiple documentaries, the notes, the testimonies from the
Can you
cult.
quote like give me like any like evidence or documents
mean,
from them where they like themselves like say that they made up this lie and then that person like died for it or killed themselves for it?
I mean, we know it's a lie because they killed themselves for it. I mean, can you say?
Well,
I mean, are you saying that
I'm not saying that people died for something they believed in. That's a lie. I'm saying a person made up a lie. They like made up a lie themselves and then they died for it. So, for
Yeah.
example, like not
I mean,
believing in a delusion, not believing in something false.
Right. The cult leader committed suicide too, and he was one who pretty much preached to his cult members that if you commit suicide, you will transcend to heaven. He committed suicide along with them.
So what's like?
What's the evidence for that? You want to see pictures, or you can. Right.
Like so, what's the evidence that he like knew his beliefs were false and that this was just a fabricated lie?
I mean, we don't know if he knew. I mean,
Okay, so you can't. If you don't know, then we can't use this as a definitive example of a human dying for a lie that themselves made up.
It's pretty reasonable to say that he fully believed in that lie. I mean, unless so here's two ways to go about this.
Yeah, so I agree he fully believed in this lie.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that he made a lie. He himself made up a lie, knew it was a lie, and died for it. He just believed in something that was false. Believed in a lie.
So how do we not know that the apostles believed in the lie and died for it?
Well, if they were the eyewitnesses saying that they saw the Christ risen and resurrected, they would be the ones that were making up that lie if it were not true.
The cult members, I mean, they must have seen something to make them believe that they would transcend to heaven by committing suicide.
Believing in the lie and dying for it is not the same thing as making up the lie yourself, knowing it's a lie and dying for it.
I mean, I'm not saying that
one, you didn't know it was a lie and you made it up and then died for it. The other one, you didn't know it was a lie and you died for it.
I mean, it's the same thing as saying you received a message from God. A lot of people can say that they receive revelations from God talking to them.
Like the way you would disprove what I'm saying is that person claims that they saw a message from God. You could prove that they didn't, and then that person died for that lie. Like,
how could we possibly prove that they didn't receive a message from God when very likely it's a psychological disorder?
How does every lie lead to a psychological disorder? What do you mean?
I'm not saying did I say every lie leads to psychological? Don't twist my words. I never said every lie. I never said that every. I never
Can
said
I?
that every lie leads to psychological disorder. I'm saying in
Don't
cases
twist my
where
words.
people say they
I never
see
said that.
God or they talk to God, and they have a revelation from God where God spoke to them in their dream, or they felt the presence of God. It can lead. It could often be explained by psychological disorder
How does this address what I said?
because I said all lies are psychological disorders.
Yeah, it's on YouTube Live right now. Yeah.
I never said all lies. So if I say
Okay.
if I say, hey, I have $100 million in my bank account.
I can just grant that you didn't say that. I don't really care that much.
Okay, I mean I didn't say that. That's stupid. But okay, whatever. I don't want to go down logical fallacies. Right? I don't want you accusing me of logical fallacies, because then that would be fallacious from your point of view. But okay.
Well,
Anyways,
luckily I
continue.
didn't accuse you of
Continue what you were saying. You said they wouldn't die for something they believe to be a lie, right? I'm not saying that. I'm saying the apostles very well could have believed in it, and it could still be a lie, just like how the cult members
Yeah,
could have
but
believed that.
who came up with the lie? Who was the one that claimed to have seen Christ risen, that made up the lie and then died for it?
I don't know who.
The apostles. They
Mm,
were the ones that claimed to have seen Christ risen, went around preaching it, and then were persecuted and killed for it.
First of all, the cult members could have said, okay, the cult members very easily could have said, we believe the cult leader, we have also seen God too, and he also spoke to us in our dreams saying that if we
But
commit suicide, we will transcend to heaven, right? They don't have to be the leader of the entire movement and can still say that they believe that they got a message from God and then
okay, but you're just
died because of
appealing
it.
to hypotheticals. Then they could have said this. Did they? No.
Well, in this case, hypotheticals are very plausible because it
If I'm
provides
making the argument that this is
it
not
provides
something we have an example of in human history, and then you're inventing a hypothetical that isn't an example in human history, then it wouldn't logically follow with my claim or debunking my claim.
it does because it shows you
So
it's a
you
very
can make up an example and then use that made up example to debunk my claim.
don't say that hypotheticals can't debunk your argument when your argument is supposed to
My
be based in
argument is
logic.
based upon recorded human history. A hypothetical isn't real recorded human history.
Heaven's Gate wasn't a recorded human history.
Your hypothetical isn't.
Yeah, but your argument was based in.
My argument
Well,
is based in
can you let me
real
finish? Can you let
recorded
me
human
finish?
history,
Can
not
you let me finish?
hypotheticals.
You don't have to repeat yourself 10 times. Can you let me finish? Let me finish my point. You said the apostles
It's
wouldn't
not that
have
hard, dude.
died for something that they believed to be a lie, right? Your point
No.
was in logic. Okay.
I
so
should have
what
kept
was your point?
repeating myself because, I mean, the fact that I have to this many times is a problem, dude.
Okay, then say what you're trying to say.
I'm saying that the apostles,
Mm-hmm.
it gives validity to their claim they were most likely telling the truth, because if they weren't, they would be making up a lie that about the Christ resurrecting and being with them and all this, and then being persecuted and killed for this lie that they made up and they
So
knew to be false.
why couldn't they have been brainwashed like those Heaven Gate cult members?
Once again, my claim was that humans do not die for a lie they themselves made up, not that humans believe in a lie and die for it.
And my claim is the cult leader of Heaven's Gate quite literally made up a lie. He made it up. He made the claim that committing suicide would transcend him and his cult to heaven, and that he died
Yeah,
for it
but
too.
we don't have any evidence that on whether or not he knew his belief was true or false.
Well, we do, because he committed suicide.
Yeah, so he didn't believe it was a lie.
No, he didn't.
Okay, so then it's not an example.
I mean, why couldn't the apostles have believed that it was true?
Well, they would be the ones making up the lie.
Right, and he made up the lie too.
But he didn't believe you're saying what I'm asking is for an example in human history where someone made up a lie, they
It's crazy
themselves
you don't
made
see
up
the
a lie, and
parallels.
then they believed it and died for it.
Right. I'm
The
saying
Marshall Applewhite, even if his thing was a lie, believed this to be fully true, believed that what he was seeing was to be fully true, and like he in these things, and he died for it.
So here's the thing. Because it can go one of two ways, right? Either the cult leader of Heaven's Gate believed that committing suicide would transcend them to heaven. He made up the lie and he fully believed in it. Or he made up the lie and he didn't believe in it. However, in both cases, he committed either way, he committed suicide, which the apostles, they could, number one, either made up the lie and believed in it, been brainwashed to believe in it, right? Just like how he was. He can make up a lie and believe in it and still follow through and die for it. Or number two, they could fully believe that it is a lie and then still die for it, just like the cult leader. Because, like you said, we have no evidence whether he believed or didn't believe in the lie.
Okay, so if we don't have evidence, then we can't use it as an example.
Exactly. So we can't use your
Okay, so
apostles'
then why?
example as an example.
Why?
Because it's the same exact thing. It's the same exact thing. You can, number one, you can not believe in the lie you made up and still die for it, or you can fully believe in the lie you made up and still die for it.
How does this mean I can't use the apostles?
Because it's the same thing as a Heaven's Gate cult leader. It's the same exact thing. Your whole entire basis of your argument is humans will not die for a lie they made up that they know is a lie, right? And as for the cult leader of Heaven's Gate, we don't have evidence as to whether he fully believed in the lie or not. Both cases are extremely plausible. Unless your evidence is quote unquote logical thinking, you came to a logical conclusion that he must have fully believed in it, which we don't have evidence of. Which proves that there's reasonable doubt there that he could have known that it was a lie and still committed suicide. Are you following me here?
So, okay.
I would just move past this apostles example if I were you.
So,
I would just move past the example if I were you.
Well, the problem is Marshall didn't what is the evidence that he made up the lie to begin with?
What is the evidence that he? So are you saying it's not a lie?
No, I'm not. I'm not saying it's not a lie. I'm saying for the example, it was someone making up a lie and then dying for it. What is our evidence that Marshall made up that lie?
So can we both agree, number one, right now, that committing suicide does not get you to heaven?
Yes.
Okay, so that's number one. That claim in itself is a lie, and he spearheaded the Heaven's Gate cults, right? He was the one preaching the gospel of that you have to commit this act to get into, right? So therefore, it is number one. The claim is a lie. Number two, he is the one who preached it. He's the one who spearheaded the movement and started the Heaven's Gate cult to preach to the cult members. So yeah, he made up the lie because where else is this said? Is this said in the Bible?
You do know where he got it from, right?
Where do you get it from?
Bonnie Nettles.
Bonnie Nettles.
Yeah.
Bonnie Nettles.
He got his belief from him who he co-founded Heaven's Gate with.
Right, and what does Bonnie Nettles cause of death?
No, it wasn't suicide. Natural causes.
Liver cancer. Right? 12 years before he actually died of liver cancer, 12 years before they committed mass suicide. He co-founded Heaven's Gate with Bonnie Nettles, right? Wait, where's the evidence that he got this from Bonnie Nettles in the first place? Just because they co-founded doesn't mean Bonnie Nettles. They co-founded it doesn't mean Bonnie Nettles was the one who made up the lie first. Where's your evidence?
I got you. Muhammad is an example that works for me. I got you. I'll give you sources.
Yeah, please. I wouldn't waste your time. There's quite literally no source. Something like that is completely unverifiable. I wouldn't waste your time on this. It's just we're just going in circles, and it's not leading anywhere.
Nah, I got you sources.
Where is it?
I'm getting the links.
Did you find one? Hmm? Oh man,
What?
did you find one?
I'm getting you some. I found articles, but I'm finding the source that they're quoting
please.
from the articles instead of just
Yeah,
using it.
please tell me the quote where it says Bonnie Nettles invented the lie, and then what is it, Marshall?
In those exact words for the exact word fallacy.
No, I never said that. No, just give me a quote where don't accuse me of fallacies. All right, you already accused me of like 2 fallacies.
Okay, what are the 2?
Number 1, what was it? You said, I said that all lies are psychological disorders.
Yeah, what's the fallacy that I accused you of there?
I mean, is that not a logical fallacy? I forgot the whole
No,
entire.
I never. That's not me accusing you of a logical fallacy.
Twisting someone's words is not a logical fallacy. Okay, cool.
Well, I didn't twist your words. It's on live and on the VOD.
Right. Yeah. And
But
then
you said I accused you of 2 logical fallacies. When I said that, what logical fallacy was I accused?
my
you
bad.
of?
That was your logic.
Yeah.
Yeah, my bad. So you accused me of one, and then you committed one yourself. All right. Anyways, I'm just looking for the quote. You can keep trying to find it. Oh man, we're gonna be here a while.
I just find the articles, not the original sources. I can just grant that they believe in a lie. I don't know for the argument.
Right. So you couldn't find it.
If I'm not gonna read through the books.
Right.
But that's not a problem. I can just affirm that's demonic attestation due to what we know historically of how humans act psychologically.
Which is what?
That they don't die for a lie that themselves made up.
Okay, so you couldn't find the source, and now you just.
I couldn't find the original source for the article, let's say.
Okay. So you couldn't find a source. Just say that. You couldn't find a source.
Not like a first-hand source. No.
Right. So your argument is void. Okay. Cool.
No.
So I would move past the positive.
How is my argument therefore void?
Because your whole argument, because I gave you 2 plausible examples.
My whole argument is that from what we know with recorded human history, humans do not die for a lie they themselves made up.
And I gave you
And you gave me one example, supposedly, of that.
Because you are giving us a universal rule by logic.
No, I never gave a universal rule.
You said
I
by
said according to human history. I
and I gave you
specifically
an
did that because otherwise it would be a
right,
universal rule that would be based
right,
on
right,
what we know in human history and could form
right.
into like a gods of the gas fallacy. That's
And I
why I
just gave
didn't do
you I
that.
just gave you an example from human history, quite recently too.
Of
So there we go.
supposedly without us either side being able to verify if this was a lie they themselves made up
You have
or
the
if it
burden
was
of proof,
something that they
man.
were
You were
believed.
the one who said
But according to what we see in human history and how humans act, it was most likely that they were deceived into believing something like this versus purely making it up.
I mean, clearly not.
What
Clearly
do you mean
not.
clearly not?
From the example I gave you, it's very plausible for them to not follow that rule of thinking.
Based upon this, which we don't have like a example or source on whether they made up the lie or not.
Right, exactly.
Okay, so
I'm
it
saying-
wouldn't be plausible either way.
No, that's the whole.
Like,
That's my whole argument.
It
Though.
wouldn't be
Right.
evidence.
Right, but that's my whole argument, though. My whole argument is that it's very possible for humans to believe, to commit suicide and die for a lie that they believe.
But we
either
don't know
one-
if this is a lie they made up or not.
Exactly, which is why your apostle's argument cannot be true.
No,
Your
you're
apostle's argument,
arguing that this is an example of humans dying for a lie they themselves made up, but then you're also affirming that this is something we don't know if they made up this lie or not. So it's not exactly.
okay, look, this is the same thing as saying the square root of 4 is 2, right? And I say it doesn't always have to be a positive number. And you're saying actually according to most mathematical calculations in
No, you
real
wouldn't
world.
do that. Mathematical justifications would be
God.
absolute.
I'm using it as an analogy.
Well,
Okay,
this
please.
is a false analogy.
Well, you wouldn't even let me finish my analogy.
Well, your analogy is a false analogy. It doesn't really matter.
Well, you wouldn't even let me finish my analogy.
If these were purely subjective,
Is this really how you debate? Is you just argue?
Well,
and
if
then
you're committing a false
interrupt?
analogy, which is a fallacy, I'm not just going to keep
Just
going along
interrupt,
with it.
interrupt.
I'm
You don't let
saying
me-
this whole time.
I mean, you're saying it's because that's why you spent 10 minutes looking for a source and then you couldn't find one. Okay, cool. Just move past the apostles' argument, man.
No.
It's clear you don't.
No.
Okay, fine.
I
We don't have
need
to.
because this is an
That's fine.
example. We don't know if they made up this lie or not.
You're saying according to human history, right? Humans do not die for a lie that they know to be a lie. And I'm saying, if that's the case, how come in Heaven's Gate we don't know? We're unsure if whether or not he believed in the lie. It's plausible for both options. Both outcomes are plausible, whether he believed in the lie or he didn't believe in the lie. Both outcomes are very plausible.
If you want to argue that both outcomes are plausible, you can. But if you argue that, then it's way more plausible that this wasn't a lie they themselves made up based upon what we have in human history.
My guy, the whole evidence for your apostles' your whole apostles' argument
Is
the
based
whole
upon what
evidence-
we have in recorded human history, and
Exactly.
your entire argumentation is not based on what we have about recorded human history,
it quite
but
really
based
is.
upon one example in which we don't know, and you're appealing to the plausibility when if you look at what we have in recorded human history, it's way more likely that it's the latter, and this wasn't wasn't a lie they themselves made up.
Okay, guys, we case solved. Apostles were very likely not willing to die for a lie. They were very likely not willing to. Okay, case solved then.
I'm talking about this.
You're talking about plausibility too.
Yeah. What's
talking about plausibility too.
Your argument you're making would be impossible.
What?
Implausible. According to what we have in human history, it's much less likely that it's this case compared to the other option.
Right, and much less likely is not a good thing to say. It's not good evidence for proving something.
You're appealing to a way lesser odd. Like what's the justification as to why we would, despite all of human history saying otherwise, that we would just take the less likely, lower percent chance that this is an example of this that goes against all of human history.
Because look, if there is even a 1% chance that the apostles knew what they were saying is a lie and died for it, if there's even a 1% chance of that happening, then it's not proof. Then that's what I'm saying.
There's no such thing
That's
as
not proof.
100% proof outside of like metaphysical truths. Proof is based upon what's more likely in percentages.
That's quite literally not what proof means. Okay, that is just quite
That's
literally not
literally
what
how
proof means.
science works.
Is that how we
With the
prove math
scientific
equations?
method, we
Is that how we
test,
prove math
experiment,
equations?
we do studies upon a wide range of people, so it's not things like a Texas sharpshooter fallacy, etc. And based upon the percentages, we determine what's more likely and less likely.
Hold on.
Proof
I
isn't
just want the entire
100%.
chat. I just want the entire chat to know. You're saying that proofs are about what's likely, the likely outcome, right? That's the proof. The whole point about a proof
No.
is to eliminate the probability. The whole point of a proof is to eliminate the probability. That's the entire point of a proof.
Go
Or
to
else
the
you just be
definition of
speculating.
proof. The very
Okay.
first definition according to Oxford Languages: evidence or argument establishing or helping to establish a fact or the truth of a statement.
You just proved my point. It's a fact. It's a fact.
So proof isn't 100%.
It's a fact.
No, helping to establish a fact or the truth.
How do you establish a fact with the likely outcome?
According to this, evidence or argument.
Are you, bro?
Establishing
you
or
cannot be
helping
serious,
to
bro.
establish a fact.
You cannot actually be serious. Okay, thing is, I know you're bullshitting. You know you're bullshitting, bro. You 100% know you're bullshitting. You're just trying to stall this out. I know that for a fact because there's no way you are this stupid.
According to Webster, the cognancy of evidence that compels acceptance by the mind of a truth or a fact.
How does that, what does probability come into play with that? Please let me know.
The cognancy of evidence that compels, not 100% fact, but based upon the evidence, the percentages compels the acceptance by the mind of a truth or a fact. That's what proof
not
is. It's not
100%
100% the case, but for example, if this is 98% of the time this works, then that would be a proof. It's not 100% perfect.
I got it. 1 + 1. The proof for 1 + 1
Evidence
equals 2
operating to determine the
shows-
finding or judgment of a tribunal.
The proof that 1 + 1 = 2 shows that it's actually very likely that
Proofs
1 +
can
1
be used.
2. Right?
What?
The proof that 1 + 1 = 2 shows that it's very likely that 1 + 1 = 2. Not that it's certain that 1 + 1 = 2. We're just very likely. We're just pretty sure that 1 + 1 = 2. That's the proof of it.
Proof means different things in different contexts.
Oh, proof now means different. How
in a
convenient
general
for you.
sense, in
How
terms
convenient for you.
of what we, for example, historical analysis and the context that we're in, proof would follow not 100%, but the cognancy of evidence that compels the acceptance, versus, for example, metaphysical truths and proof for metaphysics are absolute because it isn't based on like just observations, but it's at
I don't even think you
absolute
believe.
necessity.
I don't think number one, I don't even think you know what you're saying. Number two, I don't think
I've argued this for forever.
I don't think
you don't think I
even
know
know
what metaphysical truths are, despite the fact that I just told you what metaphysical truths are.
Obviously, you don't know what proofs are.
Okay. So despite the fact that I told you what metaphysical proofs are, I don't know what metaphysical proofs are.
Oh, is that what I said? Did I even say the word?
You said I don't think you know what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
What was I talking about?
What proofs are. I don't think you know what proofs are.
I just gave you definitions of proof. It's not always 100% absolute.
Then it's not okay. Proofs, right? Proofs are supposed to prove something to be true.
So you just use the word in the definition.
No, I'm not even using a definition. I'm not saying that's the definition. I'm saying that's the use. It's to prove something.
Okay,
that's the whole
what
idea
does proof mean?
That's the whole idea of evidence.
And what does proof
mean? Evidence is to help. It's to help prove something.
Okay, so evidence isn't 100% facts, right?
No, evidence isn't 100% fact. Evidence helps establish the fact.
And according to the definition of proof, proof is the cognancy of evidence that compels acceptance by the
What is
mind.
cognizant? Don't search it up.
Why can't I search up the definition of
Okay, no,
cognizant?
because you keep on saying.
I'm
I thought-
using what the dictionary says.
Okay, yeah, I
Should we
thought-
just like appeal to our own subjective opinion?
I mean, that's what
on
you're doing
proof?
right now. That's what you're doing right now.
So by
You're
using
you're arguing semantics.
by using opinion that isn't my subjective opinion,
You're
I'm
arguing
using my
semantics.
subjective opinion.
I mean, this is what
This
what
is the
religious
smartest thing
people
I've
would-
heard all day. An objective truth is different from proof. Try to argue logic is human convention subjective. You self-refute because you use it to argue against it. Okay. So, what do you mean, Kato? If you're atheist, if you have questions, just type them in the chat. What up, Spooky?
How you doing? So,
I'm doing good.
so what God can you prove?
Just proving a God, not specific religion God.
So you're not a Christian?
I'm a Christian. But I'm not proving the Christian God. I'm proving a God.
Okay. Okay. Can you please prove it to me?
Yeah. I'm running through the premises. Premise 1, things in the universe are in motion, motion meaning change. Premise 2, nothing moves itself. Premise 3, a chain of movers can't go on infinitely in a per se causal chain. Premise 4, there must be a first mover that isn't moved by someone else. Conclusion, the first mover is what we call God.
Well, that's just a name to
I
call
also
it.
have like some more premises. I put in premise 5, the first mover is a conscious being.
Conscious. Okay. Do you know how old the universe is?
I would just go with what science says. What, 8 billion?
Yeah, about 13.8 billion years old is the universe. If you research how old is the universe, you'll find it's about 13.8 billion years old.
Okay.
Do you know how old the world is?
How old?
4.5 billion years old. So I guess a God 13.8 billion years ago created the universe. Then he waited about 9 billion years, and then he created the Earth 4.5 billion years ago.
Okay.
Okay. Do you know how old? Do you know when life first appeared on Earth?
When did life first appear on Earth?
Now, actually, these are just estimates. No one actually knows, but the best estimate is about 3.8 billion years ago. So, meaning since the Earth's 4.5 billion years old, and life supposedly evolved about 3.8 billion years ago, for about 700 million years, there's no life at all on Earth. None at all. So I don't know what your God is doing, but he's just relaxing up in heaven, just twiddling his thumbs or whatever. But for 700 million years, there's no life at all. And do you know what the very first animals on Earth are?
No.
Supposedly, there's sponges. The best estimate is between 600 million to 800 million years ago. Do your own research. You know, I'm not a scientist, but about 600 million to 800 million years ago, sponges were the very first animals. And then as life slowly evolved, evolution started. There never was an Adam and Eve. There never was a first man and woman. We slowly evolved through natural selection. The dinosaurs have been on Earth about 230 million years ago. For 40 million years, dinosaurs were small, and they got bigger. And about 66 million years ago, an asteroid hit Mexico, wiping out 75% of all life on Earth. So primates have been on Earth about 55 million years. And then you can look up when the amphibians first appeared, when did reptiles first appear, when did mammals first appear, do all that stuff. And then for Homo sapiens have been on Earth about 6 million years, but us Homo sapiens about 300,000. Homo sapiens, 300,000. There's about, I think, like 21 different kinds of people. So my question is, if that's true, the Big Bang happened 13.8 billion years ago, and Homo sapiens have been on Earth 300,000 years, why would it got to wait almost 3.8 billion years to create people?
I don't know, but I mean, this
Doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. You don't believe in the 6-day creation, do you?
No, but us not knowing doesn't mean.
Yeah,
like
us not knowing doesn't mean it was a God. Because we don't know. We don't look at. Well, I don't know how life started.
Do you agree with the premises?
With what?
The premises of the argument.
Premises of what?
The premises of the argument I laid out. The 5 premises.
Oh well, you're just giving the God of the gaps argument. You're saying, well, life must have started, you know.
Okay, so where is the gods of the gaps a fallacy in this
Because
argument.
you have no evidence of a God.
I
So you're just saying, well, there must be a creator because I can't figure out how life started.
no,
And we're not
I
intellectually
never
design.
argued that once.
Yeah, but, okay, go do your premises again. We'll go one
Things
by
in the
one.
universe are in motion.
Yeah, that's not proof
Nothing
of a God. That's not proof
nothing
of a
moves
God.
itself.
That's not proof of a God
A
either.
chain of movers can't go on infinitely in a per se causal chain.
That doesn't prove a
There
God either.
must be a first mover that isn't moved by someone else.
That's just a claim. How do you know there must be a first mover?
Well, according to the three previous premises, if things are in motion and nothing moves itself, and there
I
can't
don't
be
believe
an
in nothing.
infinite, there can't be a per se causal chain that goes on infinitely, then there must be a first mover that isn't moved by something else.
That's a claim. That's just well, it must be a God because we can't figure out how life started. Therefore it must be a God. I mean,
This isn't an empirical argument at all. This is a metaphysical argument. I don't know why you keep bringing in empirical stuff.
Is God nothing or something?
God is something.
Okay, and where did God come from?
The first cause wouldn't come from anything.
So God came from nothing. Is that what you're saying?
No, he didn't. He always existed. It's eternally.
He always existed. Always, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay. So if God always existed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what was God doing 800 trillion years ago?
I don't know.
You don't know what he was doing?
No.
He always existed, right? He must have been alive 800 trillion years ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then he's waiting around. So 13.8 billion years ago, I don't know. I'm going to create a universe. And then I'm going to wait 9 billion years and create the Earth. And then I'm going to wait 4.5 billion years ago. I'm going to have people evolve through natural selection. And then 300,000 years ago, he creates people. So Homo sapiens have been around 300,000 years. Christianity is about 2,000 years old, right? Christianity 2,000 years old. So let's see. For 300,000 years, he creates people. And then for 298,000 years, you think, oh, you know what? It's been 298,000 years. I'm going to send a savior down to earth. I'm going to send Jesus to save people from sin, whatever. You know what I'm saying? So it doesn't make sense. I mean, Judaism is about 4,000 years old.
What's your argument?
The argument is you have no proof of a God.
What,
no proof.
What is your rebuttal to like the premises? What premises do you disagree with?
That you're the one making a claim that a God exists.
And I gave you a deductive argument, which if
it was a lousy argument. It was a lousy. It was like I can't figure out how life started, but
when did I ever argue that we can't figure out how life started, or when did when did I ever argue that?
When you say, well, everything's all perfectly all in order, there must be a mover. That's just a God of the gaps argument.
How is this a gods of the gaps fallacy?
Because you haven't proved your God.
We know things are in motion, meaning change. Nothing moves, changes itself, and a chain of movers can't go on infinitely in a per se causal chain. Each of those premises can be justified logically. Then, therefore, if that's the case, there must be a first mover that isn't moved by someone else, since in a per se causal chain, every cause gets its causal power from a previous cause, and it can't go on infinitely, which means there needs to be a source, and therefore that first there has to be a first mover.
You're claiming that it was a God, right?
Yeah, I believe it's a conscious first mover, and I can justify that logically why the first mover has to be conscious.
So if you could say that God was the first cause, I could say the universe has always been around.
You could hold that something else is the first cause, or give it a different title. The point of the argument is to prove that there has to be a first cause.
Yeah, and you say God never had a first cause, right? You say you're God that never had a first cause.
The first cause doesn't have a cause. That's why it's the unmoved mover.
So God gets a free pass. He doesn't need to be
for logically justified reasons.
That's not evidence, though. I mean, if you can prove you're God, you would collect
it's not
your
just
Nobel
evidence.
Prize.
It's just
collect $1 million.
Objective truth.
In 300,000 years of Homo sapiens, no one's ever proven any gods. All gods are based on faith. Every god is based on faith. Hinduism, they believe in the Bhagavad Gita.
How does this address the argument, dude?
You still haven't proven your God.
What premise do you disagree with?
All of them.
Okay, so are things in the universe changing?
Things in the universe, probably, yeah.
Okay, so you don't disagree with all of them? You agree with the first premise? Okay.
That changing? I guess so. I mean, we're not intelligently designed. You know what I'm saying? There's planets.
Okay, so I'm
Planets
not
present the
arguing
other
that we're
planets.
intelligently designed. You keep bringing up arguments that I'm not even making.
What I'm proving is you can't prove you're God. You know what I'm saying? I mean, did you know before now that 99.9% of all living things on Earth are extinct? Did you know that?
Dude, this guy. Okay. Empirical criteria for evidence is self-refuting. I agree. I agree. It just, if you proving God empirically, you're just ultimately it's just a God's the gas fallacy.
Hello.
Oh, what's up?
All right, so I've been listening, and I want to be a little bit more good faith and have more of a conversation than like kind of just attacking your arguments like outright. Like I don't think the other guy was doing a good job. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I'd say so.
So, I heard some of your premises, right? The one like yes, the universe is changing. I agree, right? Things in the universe change, right? Now, when it comes to the first mover thing, I see that you have a cross up and you have, like, I'm more agnostic, right? So I see you have a cross up, so I'm assuming you're Christian, right? So when it comes to the first mover thing, there may be a first mover, there may not be a first mover. The issue becomes, how can you then prove that Yahweh or Jehovah is that first mover as opposed to like a Shiva or Allah? You know what I'm saying? So what were the other premises? I was interested in hearing the other ones.
Yeah, things in the universe are in motion. Nothing moves itself. A chain of movers can't go on infinitely in a per se causal chain. There must be a first mover that isn't moved by someone else. I mean, that's pretty much the argument.
Yeah, okay, so your argument proves that your argument is you're making the logical argument for there being a first cause, but I don't think you're making the logical argument for a supernatural deity. Do you see what I'm saying?
Well, yeah, that's the purpose of the argument. Now I can get into like showing that the first cause would have to be a conscious being, and then at that point, there's a conscious being that is the source of existence and all change. I mean, that's
Okay, so how would it have to be a conscious being? I'm curious to hear that.
Yeah, of course. So, a couple things. With the conscious being, the first cause is not bound by anything else or like any other causes, right? It's the first cause. It's the source. If it required a previous cause, then it wouldn't be the first cause. So it would have to determine and act according to itself, right? Initiate within itself, wouldn't require any other causes, right? To be able to do this, it would have to be conscious. A non-conscious first cause couldn't act on its own and would be dependent on other things to act, because we define non-conscious as to be something that doesn't have awareness, and it is triggered by things outside of itself. No principle of internal action. For example, a rock. A rock can't self-act or move. It's dependent on other things such as the wind or something external from itself in order to move. Since the first cause would have to be completely independent and would have to be able to cause itself, otherwise it wouldn't be a first cause, it would have to be conscious and have an internal principle of action.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that in order for it to have the initiative to cause other things, it must have been conscious in the first place to do that. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it would have to be. That's what it means to be conscious. Yeah.
Well, the thing is that when we look at things in the universe, we see conscious as being more emergent. Like as time progresses, life becomes more and more aware and acts on its own. And I don't think causality requires consciousness, even a first cause, right? I think that might be more of that might be a type of anthropomorphism, right? Saying that, okay, for something to have the agency, I don't think it necessarily needed that at all. Like when we look scientifically speaking, we see that there's a singularity and quantum fluctuations, so on and so forth, and that's what started time, right? We don't see any conscious being making the conscious decision to start anything else, right?
What? Say that again. Sorry.
Okay, just to simplify it.
Well, I mean, just say what your last part. Like
Yeah, like singularity rise, like when we look at how scientists think time started, we see a singularity, and we see things happen due to quantum fluctuations and decay and expansion. Uh, those things like causing the Big Bang to happen, but we don't see any like a conscious being saying, "Oh, start now." You know what I'm saying? Because as we look at things in the universe, there aren't things that are consciously happening. They're like things like gravity. Think like these are laws that just happen. Like things just happen. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So I see it as kind of an anthropomorphism to put the human trait of agency onto the first cause. Oh, it must have been conscious. I kind of, when I heard what you said, it seems more of like, oh, it has to be conscious just because it needs to be. Like it's a point that proves itself rather than something else. You know what I'm saying?
Well, it would need to be conscious because to be conscious means you have a will and an internal principle of action, right? If you were if it were an unconscious being, it wouldn't be able to will to create. It would to be able to create and will to create. It would require an extrinsic cause, which would mean it's not a first cause. That's why it would have to be conscious.
Okay, so why do we then assume that creation was a choice?
What do you mean?
Like,
Well,
I think that
it would have to be a choice then. If it's purely acting on its own will and ability, creation would be a choice at that point because it willed it. It's not like something where it just created on accident and it didn't will it because it's initiating itself in accordance to its own will.
Well, do you believe that having a will would imply time and decision making? Like it implies decision making and time, right?
As we understand with humans, sure, yeah.
With humans, but so the will to create, right? Did that will to create arise before the universe was created?
Yeah, we
Okay.
would affirm that like it's an eternal will with a temporal effect. I mean, that's getting into Thomism. The exact we just know like we can logically show that the first cause can't change. The first cause would have to have an internal principle of action and a will. But as to the exact mechanics on how it does that without changing, etc., is something that we don't know. But that's not a problem. That's more of like an epistemic limitation.
Yeah. Okay. I personally don't think creation is intentional. Like there isn't someone there saying this needs to happen. And if that were the case, then he must have had the will to do that beforehand, right? But I don't think that before time it is possible to have a will to do something before anything can even exist, right? If that makes sense. If you want to say that this first cause was always there, then I think that you do you see what I'm trying to say?
Not really.
Not really. Okay. Well, look, I'll just agree. I can grant you that, right? But I still want to get down to okay. So let's say this first cause is conscious. How then can you say that this first cause is Jehovah, or what's like the next step?
I mean, that's just the purpose of alive for now, as it pertains
Okay.
to proving God. As to like
So
the
that's
religion
the thing,
aspect.
though. Does God mean because to some people, God means a deity. God means so to you, God would just mean any conscious first cause. That is your God.
The conscious being and first cause, that's the source of existence itself. Yeah.
Okay, and that's a fair type of logical argument. I think the reason people come up here, like they see a cross, right? And they want to argue biblical semantics, they want to argue theology, all this sort of stuff. You're not here to really argue that. You're just using the first cause argument, basically, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So with your argument, to me, I would say, hell, look, with that argument, I could say, how do you know it's one God? It could be many gods. It could be Allah. It could be Shiva. Like to me, with what you just gave me, all I've gotten is that okay, there could be any god out there. It could be Zeus for any. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I see what you're saying. I mean, I just did. The purpose of this live is really just to prove God and a theistic position. As to like what religion, I'll probably do something like that tomorrow. I normally just debate pretty much anything, just from the orthodox position, but specifically I did this live just to prove God and the theistic position.
Okay. Well, I'll let somebody come up. That's all right.
It's all good. I appreciate it. Yeah. I think this is where I'm gonna end the live, y'all. I'll be live tomorrow. We're only we're like 3.5 hours in, but yeah, that's all I got the mental capacity for. We'll be live tomorrow. And yeah, I appreciate y'all for all tuning in on TikTok. God bless all y'all. Okay, YouTube. Here's the dealio. Ooh, look at that. 777 viewers. I have more comments than 100% of live creators with a similar following. I think that's a good thing. All right. Here's the deal. Dude, that was exhausting. Let's see. Hold up. I gotta turn on my screen real quick. W777. Exactly. I just gotta sign into Google Docs. All right, bet. Argument for motion Google Doc coming out very soon. I need to add what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 more things, as far as I'm aware. And then also I'm working with Caden on the EED Google Doc. He's working on a basis, and I'll expand it however much I need for y'all. But yeah, I'll be live tomorrow. Probably way earlier in the morning, like 8 hours earlier from now. But yeah, dude, that was exhausting. We did a total of like 5 hours. Yeah. I appreciate y'all for all tuning in. And I'll be back tomorrow. And yeah, I appreciate y'all for all liking the live, the sharing, Wild, and walk with the Spirit. I appreciate y'all. Thank you for helping me start up the live too, and for everything, brother. But yeah, I'm gonna end the live here. I'll be back tomorrow.